Hey, are you ever going to start this podcast you've been talking about for like forever?
Do you think that anyone will actually want to listen to something like this?
What is your plan for an introduction?
Are you sure you want to talk about these topics? People usually disagree.
3 hours? Are you crazy?
Do you think you're some kind of expert or something?
Are you planning to have an intro song?
What if a bunch of people get really mad and hate you over this?
Do you even know how to make a podcast?
Are you just doing this because you like to argue with people?
Don't let this be just one more thing that you talk about doing, but never actually do.
Wouldn't it be better to do just one episode for each topic?
Stop trying to change people's opinions. Just live your own life.
Dude, people are never going to agree. Just let it go.
Is this going to be a long intro? Because if it is, I'm bored already.
Hello! You've made me extremely happy by listening to this week's episode. I hope that you are now extremely happy, simply because I told you that you made me extremely happy. Let's keep that going. Let's all be extremely happy while I express something from the heart. Real deep-like. I'm not sure if you have all seen any of the bad lip-reading videos on YouTube. If not, let me explain. They will usually take a clip from a movie or a music video or a sporting event or something. Then they will remove the audio and replace it with someone else talking. But the new talking is meant to line up with what just their lips seem to be saying. They are pretty funny, and some very strange outcomes arise. There was a really funny bad lip reading made for the 2016 Republican National Convention. As you all know by now, I lean very much conservative in my beliefs and opinions. I decided to share this video with someone else I know, who also has conservative-leaning values. Apparently, this was a big no-no. This person sat stone-faced through the whole thing and didn't think it was funny at all. I couldn't understand it. Until they said, "Do they have one for the Democratic National Convention?" in a scoffing tone of voice. Then it hit me. Okay, this guy was refusing to let himself laugh at this hilarious video because it was making fun of his team. How ridiculous. This is such a problem. We really need to get rid of this whole team player aspect when it comes to politics and government. We are all Americans, and we all live here. I understand that we all have many different leanings and beliefs, and that's awesome. But if we are going to become so obsessed with our team that we can't even take a joke, we have really missed something. I think that this is also the reason why people will say things like, "I will never vote for a Democrat." Really? What if one year the Democratic candidate believes in more of your own personal core values than the Republican does? Isn't that what really matters? We need to stop being so loyal to a banner and instead focus on what the people are saying. And also, we need to learn to laugh at ourselves again and stop being offended by everything. By the way, they did make a bad lip reading for the DNC as well, and it was also hilarious. I still think the RNC one is funnier, though. This week, my guest is Mark Mayberry. Mark is one of my closest friends, and the hope was to get him on Season 1 of the podcast, but for whatever reason, it just didn't work out. As always, when I have someone on who I already know very well, it can become difficult to discuss things that we haven't already covered before. This episode is pretty theological, and might be over the heads of some who aren't trained in the ways of the samurai. Mark is one of the few people these days who I discuss deep biblical issues with, sometimes disagreeing, on a pretty regular basis. You will get yourself a little dose of that during the last 45 minutes or so when we discuss water baptism. Topics today include Def Leppard, Van Halen, Nerf Herder, The Police, Sting, Weird Al Yankovic, Bach, Classical versus Baroque, Handel, Miles Davis, Alice in Chains, Johnny Cash, Rage Against the Machine, the Begin Again soundtrack, Temple of the Dog, A Song versus a Piece, Donald Trump, Joe Biden, Brian Regan, Dennis Miller, Eddie Murphy, The Sons of Disobedience, Capitalism, Praying Against God's Will, Anxiety Disorder, People Voting for Their Own Self-Interest, Abortion, Parental Control, Public Schools, The Sound of Freedom, Salvation, Water Baptism, Faith, and Believing God for It. Do me a big ol' whopping favor and leave a review wherever you are listening to this from. It will make me like you more. Also, go ahead and send me some feedback at whycan'twetallkaboutthat@proton.me. And I know that every week you listen to this show, you think to yourself, wow, I wish that I could be on that podcast. Well, good news. All you need to do is send me an email at whycan'twetallkaboutthat@proton.me and say, "Hey Ryan, can I be a guest on your show?" Just do it. You know you want to. Enjoy the conversation. Anyway, sorry. Let's dive in, man. Did you do your research?
I did, yeah. Yeah, I studied hard.
Good.
I'm ready.
So how's it going today, man? Let's start there. What's it?
How's it going today?
You
Good.
look kind of overworked. Are you overworked right now?
I just, haven't taken a vacation in a long time, so we're actually going to go to Carmel for a couple days.
Okay.
This weekend, so that'll be cool.
That's fun. Just you and Aaron?
And Zach.
You're bringing Zach too, huh? It's gonna kill the mood a little bit.
Yeah, it's more for a vacation. Well, he's going back to school soon, so.
Wasn't that usually where you guys go for your dates, right? Where did you just say?
Cambria.
No, but where did you just say you're
Carmel.
going? Oh, Carmel, up north by.
Yeah, so Erin's a big missions. She loves the missions. So
Okay.
There's a mission up there. So.
Okay. She's thinking about converting to Catholicism, or.
Well, no, that would be a reconversion because she was already Catholic.
Oh,
So.
I see. When you met her, was she Catholic or was she?
No, she was.
Okay, so you weren't responsible for bringing her out of that
No.
or anything.
No.
You were just responsible for darkening her.
It's funny though, because that was one of the
Calvinism.
things when I was thinking about dating her. I asked her before. I was like, "Oh, so I heard you're Catholic, or are you still Catholic?" Or
Yeah.
so I heard something about Catholic. So
Didn't you meet her at a church or something, or church group? Or?
Bible study, yeah.
Oh, okay.
No,
Well, you should have assumed a Catholic wouldn't come to a Bible study.
I guess not.
With the likes of you.
Yeah, it'd be a mortal sin.
Yeah, it was probably more you just trying to. It was one of those questions you probably knew the answer to. You just wanted to
gotta make
confirm.
sure, though.
Yeah, it was a confirmation.
Because I was thinking, like, if we date, then we're going to get married, and then
Right. Right.
So.
You were thinking way ahead on that first meeting.
Well, and I think I told you this, but I asked her about homeschooling on like the second
Oh
day.
yeah. Right. See, you had big plans, man. How old were you at that time?
24, 23.
And that's what you were thinking about. Mm-hmm. Marriage, family, homeschooling.
Yep. In that order.
Wow. That's crazy. Did she think it was nuts that you were thinking that so early on?
Yeah, I think she thought it was a little bit weird, but I think she was cool with it. She's a pretty serious person, so.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I like when I'm around people that are really serious, I make it my mission to try to make them laugh. I've always been that way. I don't know why. It's just like I want to say, and sometimes it just falls flat.
Yeah.
Like you make a joke and they just look at you like, dude, what's wrong with you? Like,
did you think that was funny?
and then you're just like, oh, I failed. I blew it,
Yeah, they were doing this thing in church the other on Father's Day about dad jokes.
Yeah.
And like dad's like telling them funny, and my kids are like, "Yeah, Dad, you never really did that." It's like, yeah, I'm sorry. The dad with no jokes.
Yeah, you failed in the humor department with your kids.
I did, but
which is funny because Zach is funny.
He is.
I think Zach, he has that kind of dry sense of humor, but he's made me laugh multiple times.
Yep. Yeah. And actually Hannah is too, if you get to know her.
Yes, I was going to say that too. She's been funny. I haven't been around her as much.
She's a total goofball once you get her kind of loosened up and relaxed, but yeah.
And does her husband play off that now, or now that she's married?
Oh yeah, well he's like,
is he funny
total
too?
Goofball.
Okay.
Yeah. So together they're just little
That's
party.
awesome. So their kids are probably going to have the humor, and the dad jokes that your kids were so sadly deprived of. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
This is really good.
Do you want more, dude? I mean,
no.
You said you only want a little bit. I already felt like I was giving you too much. Okay. It is good.
It's delicious.
It'll hook you, man. Whoo-wee.
Mm-hmm.
So.
The crack.
I've called it liquid crack before.
Yeah, it is.
So, all right, man. Let's jump in.
Let's do it.
Music.
What about it?
Let's talk about it, man. Let's talk about your favorite stuff. Earliest musical memory. Earliest time you remember thinking to yourself, I like this.
So earliest musical memory was my first record was Def Leppard.
Okay.
Pyromania.
All right.
I still think it's a great album.
You still listen to it today?
Once in a while I'll throw in a song.
You just got to feel.
I don't have the album anymore, but the record. But
But you have
I probably should.
What
We
do you
have
it on
a record
CD,
player.
Spotify? What do you got it on?
I just do Apple Music. That's
Oh,
what I
okay.
do.
Okay.
And then my first cassette tape I ever owned. So, like going through like the history of musical devices here.
You skipped 8-track.
I never had an 8-track. I don't know why. But my first cassette was 1984 Van Halen.
Okay.
Another, I think, all-time great album. Loved that. So then I got really into Van Halen and got all their old albums and was kind of a Van Halen junkie. Until David Lee Roth left, and then I still liked them. They're still really good, but they just weren't the same.
Yeah, they were
And I
better.
moved on.
They were better after that.
No. Well, you know, they even could have been better, but for me, it was just a thing where it's like, this is the group I knew.
Right.
They're just not that group anymore.
Yeah,
so.
it's like listening to, like I've talked before about remixes of a song.
Yeah.
Like
yeah.
I always hate a remix, but I think it's only because I shouldn't say I always hate a remix. If I've heard the original and I like the original,
Yeah.
then a remix to me is like, what is this crap?
Yeah.
You've changed
Yeah.
what I love. But then if I hear the remix first, like let's say that's the first version I've ever heard, then I'll hear the original someday and I'll be like, what is this crap?
Yeah, yeah.
This is horrible. I'm so glad they remixed
Yeah,
this because
yeah.
this original, is horrible.
I think that's true.
Yeah.
Because I mean, and I liked Van Hagar, but it's not the same. It just wasn't.
Have I ever asked you if you've heard the song by Nerf Herder? Van
You
Halen?
did mention that. but
Okay.
I've never heard of them.
Okay. You gotta look that song up.
And it's called Van Halen?
I think the song's called Van Halen.
Okay.
Yeah. It's like I bought Van Halen 1. It was the best record I ever owned. And then it's like the first couple stanzas goes through all about how it's his favorite band, and then the end's all how he hates them now.
Yeah.
Is this what you wanted, Sammy Hagar? Dave lost his hairline. You lost your cool, buddy. Yeah.
Yeah, Dave went a little crazy after he left. He did like that weird, like, what was that?
California Girls. Yeah. I could never stand looking at the guy. And I know that sounds wrong, and it probably is wrong, but for me, he always looked like a dork.
Well, later on, for sure.
Yeah.
But in the beginning, I thought he was the coolest guy ever.
Oh, really? Maybe, okay, so there's a little bit of age. You're about 5 years older than me, so
Yeah.
I wasn't really, I knew of Van Halen, I knew of Def Leppard, I knew of those bands, but it was more like, oh, my dad likes this stuff. Like my dad showed me Def Leppard, but I wasn't really into Van Halen until my first time ever remembering, oh, this is Van Halen, was Sammy Hagar.
Yeah.
It was it Pound Cake? Is that the name of the song? Right? And then they did Right Now, I think was another one. So, I mean, this was my age of MTV, where I was starting to watch music videos and I would see these, Van Halen. So, I mean, I didn't even know. But then, of course, going back and listening to Jump and some of these, I was like, oh, I've heard this song before. I just never put two and two together that it was Van Halen.
Well, because 1984, I was like 7th grade or something. Mm-hmm. And that was the last album with David Lee Roth. So
1984 was?
I'm pretty sure.
And is that the one with Jump? And okay.
So I caught them. I was really young, and I was just finding out about them, and that was the last album with him. So
you didn't have a long time to get attached.
They kind of went back and listened to all their old stuff. Yeah.
Okay. And what happened? Do you even know what happened there? Like, was it did they kick him out, or that's the vibe I got?
Yeah, I think he was just a pain to deal with, and
egotistical kind of.
Yeah, and Eddie was the genius behind it all anyway, and so he just wanted to do his own thing without somebody bugging him.
He was writing all the music and the songs and stuff, right?
So. Yeah. Yeah, so sort of like the Sting Police thing, he wrote all the music, most of it.
And he's like, why am I paying these other three guys?
And Stuart Copeland was a pain, so he was like, I'm done with you people. Although some of my favorite Police songs, which is my favorite band, Stuart wrote. And I didn't know that until
he's
later.
The drummer, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, they're probably not as good musically, but I just dug them. I don't know. I just like his style of writing. But
yeah, see, that's another one that, again, by the time I came in to listen to that, he was solo.
Yeah.
So I'm listening to If I Ever Lose My Faith in You, and what's the one I love to this day, off the same album, Fields of Gold.
Yeah.
I love that song. That's like one of those nostalgics. I don't know. It just makes me feel like I'm a little kid again for some reason.
Yeah.
It hits you in the feels,
Well, I think, personally, I think Sting is like one of our greatest musical geniuses of our time.
Right. Well, I mean, if you name your kid Sting, he's going to go somewhere, right? I mean, it's like you're almost setting him up for success.
His
is that not his birth name? Oh, you don't think so?
No,
okay.
it was Sumner.
Like Gordon. It's Gordon something.
Gordon.
Sumner.
Yeah.
I don't know why. That just popped in my head just now.
Sting sounds way cooler.
It does. Yeah. If my name was Gordon, I'd probably change it to something like that.
Yeah. So when I was, I'm guessing, 7th grade, something like that, Synchronicity came out, and they were like the biggest band in the world.
Oh, what's on that album? Is that like King of Pain and?
Yeah, all their most famous songs.
What's the one? What's the one I'm trying to think of?
Well, Wrapped Around Your Finger.
No, that one's good too, but that's not the one I'm thinking of.
No, I know which one you're thinking of. It's like my least favorite.
Every Breath I Take.
Yeah, that's the one police song I really don't like.
Oh, really? Is that because it was so popular?
Yeah, it's just boring to me.
You just hate the popular stuff. You're trying to stay
I thought it was boring. I don't know. I mean, it's a good song, but so like I like their more upbeat stuff. But so I didn't. I mean, I liked them in high school. They were always, thought they were great, but it wasn't until college that I really got into them. A friend of mine had their box set.
Oh, okay.
And so it had all their old, like all their kind of more obscure stuff on it.
Right.
And I just dug it. So good.
Yeah.
So I got a lot of Sting, a lot of Police.
So again, like I was saying, I did go back and listen to Police stuff, but I knew all Sting solo stuff first, and then I went back, and then I started to realize that we just brought up King of Pain a minute ago, and I was a big Weird Al guy when I was younger.
Oh,
From elementary school, listened to all Weird Al. Every new album he put out, I got. Still a fan today. I think he's brilliant.
Love Weird Al.
But he had one called, I think it was called King of Suede.
Yeah.
And it was the whole, this whole, and a lot of the songs I used to listen to, and which makes it funny that I was such a big fan, because when I used to listen to Weird Al back in the day, most of the originals that he was doing parodies, I didn't even know them. I knew the Michael Jackson ones, Eat It, Fat, of course I knew all those. But I didn't know that. Like I don't remember the song King of Pain until then I heard it later. I was like, oh, I remember this is King of Suede, and then I found myself singing the Weird Al lyrics. Yeah.
No, there's definitely a handful of songs that I prefer Weird Al than the original.
Oh, really?
Because they're so great.
Well, there's some of them are just great. But I mean, the Smells Like Nirvana.
Yeah.
That was just, but I'm mumbling and I'm screaming. Just so funny. And then the way he recreates the music videos to look like the real ones is just hilarious.
Oh, have you heard the Eminem one?
Oh, yeah.
Couch
Potato, yeah.
So great.
Yeah. One of my all-time favorites, if you ever have about 16 minutes of your day to spare, because that's how long it is. He did a parody of, I think it's an R. Kelly song. And I don't...
Oh, the drive-thru?
Yes! Yeah. Have you seen it? Have you watched the video?
Yeah.
Oh, it's all
so
animated.
Great.
Dude, it's so funny, and it just goes on and on and on, and you're like, when is this song over? Oh, dude, I just laughed so hard watching that. Just because him and his wife arguing about what they're going to eat for... That's so good.
Stuck caught in the drive-thru.
Caught in the drive-thru. What's the original?
I have no idea.
Is it Trapped in the Closet?
I probably never even heard it.
Yeah, I don't think I have either. But I think I looked it up just because, again, I had never. When I heard the Weird Al one, I was like, I know R. Kelly, I know his music, but I don't think I've ever heard that particular song.
So great.
So yeah, he's hilarious, man.
I used to watch those with the kids.
The music videos.
Yeah, the Weird Al.
Yeah, because they're funny and they're clean and they're I just ended up showing when we were just in Washington visiting Danny this last time, and his son Noah kind of got into some Weird Al stuff, and I don't remember if it was because of me or if I showed him something, but I was showing him the music videos for Eat It. And then for Fat, and of course I got to show them the original because they'd never seen the original Michael Jackson videos, and that's what makes it even more funny. Like you look at Bad, right? And they're walking through the thing, and they're just all this gang guys, and
he does Michael Jackson so great.
Oh, it's hilarious,
all
dude.
The little quirks.
Yeah. Oh no, that's all those little things. Oh man, yeah, he's awesome. He's so cool. I want to see him live someday.
You talk about musical genius, man. Wow.
Did you ever see the movie that just came out with the kid that plays Harry Potter, Daniel Radcliffe? He plays Weird Al.
Really?
Yeah, it's like
It's a Weird Al movie?
It's a Weird Al movie, yeah, and it's endorsed by him and the whole thing. I haven't seen it yet, but I've heard it was really good.
So you know he went to Cal Poly?
Yeah, I did know that.
Yeah.
He went to Cal Poly, and he went to high school down in Linwood with some people that I know now.
Yeah.
And they always talk about him like he was like the only white guy in the whole school, like or one of, right? They said it was like
straight out of Linwood.
Yeah, it was like the school was like 50% Hispanic, 40% black, and then like 10% other stuff, right? And then he said people used to mess with him all the time and pick on him. They said, but he held his own pretty good. They said he just, it's just so funny because you think he'd be more hardened and kind of, but he seems like such a fun guy,
Oh yeah, I'm sure he was a full-on nerd.
Oh yeah, totally.
Yeah, he's like an engineering student at Cal Poly. So.
Right.
He's a smart.
And wasn't he a cheerleader? I heard he was a cheerleader. He was a male cheerleader at school too. Yeah,
that's perfect.
But that was before you. You were at Cal Poly too, right? But that was before you, right? Because he's older.
Yeah, I'm
than
not
you.
that old.
You're not. You're what? Are you 60? So 63?
Yeah. No, I just turned 51.
Oh, you did? When's your birthday? I missed it.
May.
Oh, maybe I didn't miss it.
It's a little bit ago.
Okay.
Yep.
51.
So I graduated from Poly in 96, I think.
Mm-hmm. Nice. That's the year I graduated high school.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Bless you.
Thanks for making me feel old.
You're welcome. All right, so let's head back to, we just had a whole bunch of stuff. So Def Leppard.
Mm-hmm.
So Def Leppard, Van Halen, The Police are probably in your top 5 favorite bands of all time. So let's break those down a little bit.
Well, I don't know if I'd say that.
Oh, okay.
I wouldn't put Def Leppard in my top 5. They were just my earliest memory, and I did really like them, but I mean...
Okay. They're not ones you can return back to a lot today and enjoy it.
Van Halen, yes. The Police, for sure. I love Sting. So I'll put Sting and The Police in the same bucket, and then Van Halen.
Okay.
So top 5 after that. I'd have to do some Baroque music, 'cause I love that. So probably Bach.
Okay. That's pronounced Bach.
So? Yeah, Bach.
Right, Bach.
Is he my favorite?
Would that be Sebastian Bach?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. JSB. Johann Sebastian Bach. What else?
Well, hang on that note. So I want to ask you though, do you, like, I know Zach's really into, obviously he writes classical, he does that stuff, right? That's his deal. Did he turn you on to all that stuff?
Yeah.
Or did you bring him into that stuff?
No, my mom listened to classical when I was a kid, so I heard it, and I was like, whatever. But there's stuff I remember from my childhood that I did like. But yeah, Zach got into it when he started really getting into piano and performing, so he'd play a lot of classical, and then he studied composition and still is, and so he's taught me a lot about classical music, about different genres, and
which is surprising to even know that there is more than one genre. To me, there's classical.
Yeah,
that's orchestras. That's
violins,
cellos. Well, I'm sure I'm very ignorant because I'm like you. I love that kind of music. But only if I'm like studying or I'm reading a novel or I'm just hanging out relaxing. Never when I'm driving, because I'm gonna drive off the road listening to that. It's got to be something that's not going to put me to sleep, But I prefer like that kind of stuff if I'm doing something that requires me to look at words or read words.
Yeah.
Because I can't listen to like lyrical music while I'm doing that, because then I'm gonna.
Well, to me, it's a mood thing. I just love the mood of, especially Baroque music. It's just bright and beautiful. And
well, what's the difference between Baroque and classical?
Okay, so this is, I'm pretty ignorant, but this is what I've learned.
You know more than me because you know there's a difference.
So Baroque music, one of the main things that I can tell is it will have harpsichord in a lot of it. Not all, obviously.
What is that?
It's a keyboard instrument from that era, which was before piano was invented.
Okay.
So it was the keyboard instrument they played before the piano was invented.
Is it like a harp?
And this is like, I could be wrong, but it's somewhere around 1500, 1600s, and then piano came along. And when the piano came along, I think that's kind of when you turned into the classical genre. So anyways, it has a really cool sound. It sounds kind of like a real, because I think it sounds almost like a harp piano mixture. I don't know.
Oh, but it came out before the piano.
Yeah.
But does it have like keys like
it has
a piano?
Keys.
Okay.
But
it's not like a keytar.
No, it has keys.
Okay.
And it sounds kind of more like strings. So.
Have you ever played one?
No.
Have you ever seen one?
I have. I saw a performance from the Santa Maria Philharmonic where they did Baroque and they had a harpsichord and the harpsichord player.
Okay.
Really cool.
So we went to Pacific Christian over here and saw the Santa Maria Philharmonic, I think it was. But they were doing, what was that? What's the kid's story? With Sasha's the Duck and Peter and the Wolf.
Oh, okay.
They did Peter and the Wolf. It was a thing for the kids. I think it was a field trip. So, I mean, they very well could have had that up there, and I just wouldn't even known what I was looking for.
I don't think so. I think that probably was not Baroque period.
Okay.
Because after the Baroque period, after the piano came in, that harpsichord kind of just went out the window. Nobody really used it.
Oh, okay. We got to bring it back, man.
I agree. I think it's cool.
You and I got to get one. We'll start
it doesn't sound great by itself, but if you have it in a orchestra, it sounds really cool.
So is that one of the main distinctions then? Like if you hear a harpsichord, is it always definitely Baroque? If you hear a harpsichord?
I don't think you could say definitely, but most likely, yeah.
Okay.
And I mean, I'm sure, I'm not, I don't know a lot about it, but from what Zach's taught me, that's kind of one of the main things. I mean, even the horns are different. So you have trumpets and different horns, but they don't have valves, so they sound very different and they're played different. I think they're really cool. They sound really cool. They did have woodwinds that were similar, but so a lot of the instruments were different. So there's a different sound and different style. It's definitely got a different style to it. It's very bright, cheery, almost royal sounding. Like I don't know.
Well, when we're talking about classical instruments, like classical musical instruments, or what am I trying to say? Like the kind of instruments you would associate with classical music. Yeah. I don't think bright, sunshiny. Like if I try to say bright, sunshiny, then I start getting the more like jazzy kind of stuff where it's upbeat and you got the big band kind of sound, you got the horns, and you got the fast drum beat and the whole deal. I don't hear any classical music. Well, maybe that's the difference.
That's the difference. You're not hearing a lot of Baroque music.
Okay, so if I hear Baroque, it's more like kind of like jazz.
It's kind of what you would. How would you describe? It is, I think, to me, something you would associate with like a royal coronation or something like that. Just very celebratory. Okay. But not all of it. I mean, that's just kind of a generalization. Classical definitely has more of a mathematical sound to it. It's all very organized.
See, math doesn't have a sound. I don't know. What are you talking about?
But it does. It's all very organized. It's all very, I don't know. It's definitely more subdued. I don't know.
And then Bach is one of the not pioneers, but like one of the
most
well names of Baroque.
And I think most musicians would consider him one of the best, if not the best, especially that period. Although I love Vivaldi and Handel.
Handel's Messiah? That guy? Okay. Uh-huh. So that's Baroque?
Yeah, that's Baroque.
Okay.
Vivaldi,
I used to listen to that at the ranch.
Mm-hmm.
Handel's no. It wasn't Messiah. It was something else. Handel. Water
music.
Water music.
Oh, dude, that's one of my favorites.
Yeah. So they had that CD at the ranch. There was the amusement park, was where I worked, and there was this little castle. It was really cool. There was like 3 stories, and there was like different little rooms and stuff. Well, in the middle room was like our break room.
Yeah.
And we had a little TV in there and stuff, a couple chairs. We'd hang out in there because we could see the road to the house to see if anybody was coming. Yeah. Because had to be in the park in case anybody came to ride the ride. Sometimes we didn't do nothing. Wow. Because it was like, say we had guests that were like 95. It's like, they're not going to be riding the rides.
Yeah.
But then other times we had guests that were like teenagers or whatever. They're going to be out there all day, pretty much. So we could see that. So we'd watch movies, we'd play video games, but while we're watching. But anyway, sometimes I would take my break. I would go up into the top story of that thing. Well, they had in the bottom of the castle area, they had the sound system that controlled the whole park. Mm-hmm. And they had these little rocks that look like speakers.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, little speakers that look like rocks. Yeah, they were rocks that look like speakers. It just blew everybody's mind. No, they were speakers that looked like rocks, and they were all over the thing. Well, we mostly had like Disney music playing through there, like when there was stuff. Well, when there was nobody out there and I was taking my break or I was reading a book or whatever, I put on that water music because that was in that same down there in the room. I don't know who put it there. I don't know if it was supposed to be like for more like sophisticated events. All right, let's cut the Disney music. Let's put on some of this more like classical kind of sounding stuff. But I would put that CD on because, like I was saying before, because it was instrumental. There was no vocals. And it was hard for me to read my novel with Mickey Mouse singing in my ear or whatever because I was hearing his words. And I can't do two words from two different places. That just confuses me. Some people can do it. But anyway, I put that on and I would read to it. Yeah. And I used to love that. So how fun. So
it's beautiful. Yeah, that's one of my favorites. I've kind of burned out on it because I played it so much. But and I think a lot of it too, like especially with Baroque, it has like a story to it. A lot of it will have a story to it. Like Vivaldi's Four Seasons, he'll take you through the seasons, and within each season there'll be like the upbeat part, and then the subdued kind of like they're sleeping or it's in the afternoon, everybody's kind of crashed out, and then the party. So
is it like the force, like winter, spring, summer, fall?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So like in the winter, does it make you feel cold?
Yeah, no, it does. It has like sound of like beating rain or like a snow blizzard. It gives you that kind of feel.
Wow.
And then then it'll go into where you're in the cabin by the fire and has that kind of subdued sound. So.
Okay. So it's mood music. So like you said, it makes you feel a certain. It can't be a story without
words.
There's no such thing. Story and words are this. I mean, they have to go. How do you tell a story? Well, no, unless you're doing
feel it.
Well, but you could do like, was it pantomime? Right? Is that what that's called?
Yeah.
So you could tell a story that way, I guess. But how can you tell a story with just musical instruments?
You can. I mean, I guess it helps if people kind of know what you're trying to do. But yeah, you can. If you listen to the Four Seasons, you can tell.
Yeah.
But then also, like the water music was actually a celebration that the king was going to basically do a celebration on the river, the great river. I forget what it's called.
The river Styx.
No, the Thames.
The Thames.
I think it is.
The Thames River.
Yeah.
The Strait of Gibraltar.
So Handel wrote it for that, where they actually played it on the water.
Right. And have you ever gotten to see Handel live?
Yeah, I was there. When he put out his first CD. Yeah.
You're like, man, I was in the front row.
Yeah.
Best show I ever seen.
And then, and there's also a religious component to it. Like Bach was a Christian. Handel, Anglican, probably.
Well, he did the Messiah, I assume.
Exactly.
But of course, what's his face did Jesus Christ Superstar.
Oh yeah.
So I guess that close. Was that Andrew Lloyd Webber? I think did that.
Yeah. So you can also get a lot of cool, like Bach wrote for the Mass, a lot of Roman Catholic Mass music.
So Bach was a Catholic.
Yeah.
And Handel was a Protestant.
Probably Anglican.
Is that Protestant or Catholic?
Would be the English version of Catholicism when the king wanted. I think the story goes he wanted to get a divorce. The Pope wouldn't let him, so he broke off from the Roman Catholic Church,
which is pretty standard, right?
And started.
You're not gonna let me do what I want. I'm out of here.
Exactly. So that's when the Anglican thing started. So it was like England's version of Roman Catholicism.
Okay, cool. Boy, that was fun. I got to start checking some of that. So that Four Seasons, that was Vivaldi. Mm-hmm. Okay, and that's spelled like
Definitely
it sounds.
One of my favorites. Yeah.
Vivaldi.
Yeah.
Okay. So for your favorites so far, we're up to 4. We have Def Leppard, Van Halen, The Police, and Bach.
Def Leppard.
Okay, scratch Def Leppard, but leave Bach in there.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay. So we got 2 more then. You got to do.
Why am I blanking?
I don't know.
And even my kids here would help me.
You need to phone a friend?
Yeah. Okay, Miles Davis for sure.
Okay, so now we're in jazz.
So I took a jazz appreciation course in college, Cuesta College. Great teacher. He was actually like a jazz musician, played on the weekends, and I just loved it. It was like one of the best classes I ever took, and I got really into jazz. And I mean, Miles Davis is a real famous. I mean,
I've heard of Miles Davis. Yeah. Probably some other jazz people you could tell me. I'm like, who?
Yeah, but he is great. So he's one of my favorites, if not my favorite jazz. Yeah, and I listened to a lot of Miles.
Did you ever see him live?
I did not.
You could have, because he just died a few years ago, I think, right?
No.
10 years ago?
No.
That was like 2000. I'm probably off.
I think it was early 90s.
Okay.
Yeah, early 90s. So he put out a fusion album with hip-hop in it.
Oh, who was in that?
I don't know. It wasn't anybody.
It was 90s, so it was like Snoop Diggity and...
It would have been, early 90s. It's called Doo-Bop. I think Doo-Bop.
I'm going to have to check that one out.
It's really cool.
Because some of my favorite rappers or rap groups from the 90s and kind of involved jazz stuff.
Yeah. Like
Tribe Called Quest.
Yes.
They had some stuff in there. Yeah. What was that other one that did Cantaloupe?
Oh, yeah.
Or Flip Fantasia. What was that group? I forgot. They were like a one-hit wonder, but I loved that song. Because it was such a different than you're listening to all the kind of like the G-Funk stuff that was coming out at that time. So to hear something so different like that, I was like, this is kind of cool.
About that. That was a great song. Yeah, I agree. I like that fusion.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so Miles, I like jazz.
Okay. But you're saying jazz and Baroque, or would you say there's a lot of similarities there?
No.
Okay.
No.
Gotcha.
No. I mean, you could have some similar. No, not even the instruments would be different. So yeah, Miles, and then I know I'm forgetting somebody.
Well, is there anybody else in the jazz genre that you like, or?
I like Thelonious Monk. I have some of his stuff.
Is that like the Thelonious Monk?
No,
like the monk?
Thelonious.
Oh, it's one word.
Thelonious Monk.
I was going to ask what Lonious meant. Like, does that mean like lonely?
No.
Like the monk that's all by himself?
No, just Thelonious. It's a very cool name.
Okay.
And then Charles Mingus.
Never heard of him.
Really good. Bass player. Had a band that was really, really good. Oh, I saw Wynton Marsalis live.
Oh, nice. And I've heard of him.
He was great.
Yeah.
Great trumpet player.
Yeah.
And one of his albums was really good.
See, that's the kind, and this is me speaking off of like no experience and having no idea what I'm talking about. But I've always looked at something like the trumpet. What does it have? 3 buttons? 4 buttons?
Something like that, yeah.
I'm like, how many? I mean, so when somebody
valves,
says,
actually.
yeah, whatever. Like I said, speaking from ignorance. But it's like, oh, he was an amazing trumpet player.
Yeah.
I'm like, how much can you even like? I mean, how hard is that? Like if I was to pick up a trumpet and learn to play the trumpet, could I listen to like Wynton Marsalis and be like, oh yeah, within a week I can play what he played?
Not even close.
Not even close. Okay.
You would have a hard time just getting a sound out of it.
Yeah, because it'd be like,
you'd have to get some training just to get a sound out of it.
Well, let me rephrase it. Let's say I'm a person who's played trumpet for years.
Yeah.
Is it hard for me to play a song of his? I mean, like, what makes him great? Is I guess what I'm asking. Is it that he's writing good songs, or is it more that he's playing things that the average trumpet player just can't play?
Well, I'd say for me, the writing's always the most impressive.
Me too.
To be able to write.
Me too.
Music is just
right. I always appreciate an artist who writes their own music as opposed to
Yeah, I mean, there's some music that's really difficult to play, difficult notes to hit, combinations, speed, and then just the sound. How pure is the sound? Like something like a trumpet or a saxophone, just getting the instrument to actually sound pure and clean and proper is really difficult, and especially to do it consistently. So yeah, I think especially if you've tried to play an instrument like that, you can tell like, wow.
Yeah. Oh, and I know. I mean, I think it was it 3rd grade, maybe 4th grade. They were doing the band thing, and they were like, oh, if anybody wants to learn, we got this teacher coming to the school, and he's going to teach her whatever. So I was going to play the saxophone. So I told my parents, got to get a saxophone, And I wasn't like a fan of like anybody that, it wasn't like I was like, oh, I want to sound like this guy or whatever, Probably the only guy at that point that I knew that played the saxophone was that guy from the Muppets. Right? The little
Animal?
guy. No, Animal's the drummer.
Oh, that's right.
What was it? Zoot Suit something, I think his name was. Or Zoot. Maybe it was just Zoot. I can picture him, but I don't remember his name. But anyway, so I got this thing, and they gave us the notes. Like, here's the first song you're going to learn, right? And I went home, and I was like, but I got to the point where I was playing these notes.
Okay.
And I was like, all right. And I had it down, man. I had this song down. I had no idea what the song was. I was like, oh, this sounds pretty cool, right? So then I go to school the next time, and they're all, and the teacher's like, so how'd you all do with the song? And I was like, oh yeah, we got it real good. And the teacher goes, and I'm sure you all realized what song it was, like right as soon as you learn how to play it. I'm going, no, I sure didn't. And then someone else in the class played it, and I go,
oops.
No, that's not what I was like. I was playing the same notes, but in the wrong like timing and the whole thing. Yeah. I thought I was playing a real cool song. It was like A B C D E F G or something, right? And I was like, oh yeah, I didn't get that. So I just kind of sat there quietly, like, well, I guess I'm not going to be like my friend from the Muppets.
Yeah. Well, see, that's the thing. I've never even played. I mean, I've tried to play drums, and I can kind of play drums.
Right.
I learned how to play piano enough to play like Mary Had a Little Lamb or something.
Right.
So I'm actually musically very ignorant.
Yeah.
But just, I've always liked music, so I've tried to learn.
Yeah, 2 of your 3 kids are involved musically.
So I've learned a lot from them. So
That's cool, man.
But I'm still missing my 5th favorite musician.
Yeah, you are. Well, we got Miles, Bach, Van Halen, The Police, and then Def Leppard.
No,
I'm going to keep throwing Def Leppard in there for you.
That's not going to work.
How about hip? You got to throw a hip hop guy in there.
No, I don't.
Not a hip hop fan.
I've listened to hip hop just to kind of be able to relate.
Yeah. How about like hard rock, like to like modern more rock, like 90s or 2000s rock?
Oh, you know what? I know. I'll throw in some grunge.
Okay.
I really Soundgarden.
Okay.
I like Soundgarden a lot. Chris Cornell, great. Temple of the Dog.
Oh, okay.
Actually, I would put that in there. Like that combo.
Their one album.
Yeah. So it was what Pearl Jam and Soundgarden and.
Yeah, and I think was there somebody from like was it Screaming Trees in there too, or
Mother Love Bone or something.
Well, Mother Love Bone was the band that they made the album for.
Yeah, because he died.
Yeah, like the singer died or something, so they made that album. What was the name of that album? Was it just called Temple? It was just called Temple of the Dog. But I think that was made as a tribute to whoever the guy was.
So that was a great.
But I think all the songs were written by Chris Cornell. I know Eddie Vedder was featured on 2 of them, but I don't think the Pearl Jam guys really had anything to do with the writing.
Yeah.
I think it was, and I could be getting this wrong, but I think it was Chris Cornell had written the songs, and he's like, hey, we want to do this tribute for this guy or whatever, and I need some musicians, so he got, the whole Seattle grunge thing.
His voice is just, I don't know, to me it's just crazy the way he could
his range is sing, unbelievable.
Insane. Like, he could scream, but make it sound really, really cool, and really beautiful.
Yeah. So did you get into Soundgarden first or Temple of the Dog first?
Probably Temple of the Dog first. Okay. Remember the Singles soundtrack?
Yes.
Movie? Yes. Oh, dude. That soundtrack was so...
Oh, it was all 90s grunge. It was great. Yeah, it was like Alice in Chains was on there. And Soundgarden. Pearl Jam was on there. Pearl Jam had a couple songs on it that were only released on that soundtrack.
And then Mother Love Bone, I think, was on there.
Were they on there? I don't remember that.
I think so.
So would you say Soundgarden then is your favorite of
I'd go
Seattle grunge?
I just remember, Soundgarden's probably my favorite. I mean, I love Alice in Chains, but it's just too depressing. Oh. I get so depressed.
See, I go back and forth between Alice in Chains and Pearl Jam as being my favorite.
I really liked Pearl Jam originally, but I don't know. I think so many bands tried to sound like them. I kind of got sick of them.
Right.
I just got annoyed by it, but they were great. Alice in Chains is great. They just just depress me too much. I can't handle it.
Whether lyrically or this the sound?
All of it. I mean, even just the sound, it's beautiful, but it's like, wow, like I just
see. I think I have the
cry.
opposite. Like I maybe back when it came out, maybe, and if I sit there and if I really focus on the lyrics, like songs like "Down in a Hole" and like it's like that's kind of depressing.
Or like "Nutshell."
Oh yeah,
beautiful.
Nutshell.
But,
yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Well, "Nutshell." That's on Jar of Flies, right?
Yeah.
So Jar of Flies, like. So many people didn't like that album.
Oh, it was a great album.
I love it, dude.
Oh, gosh.
I mean, it when we're talking about like feeling, like I always say, hit you in the feels. That's the way I describe that.
Totally.
When you just have that feeling,
Yeah,
I don't
exactly.
know how else to say it. That album, as far as that band goes, that album nails it for me. Like almost every song on there hits me that way.
Yeah.
To where, but if I had to pick a favorite Alice in Chains album, it would definitely be Dirt. Because I mean that one just had way too many
songs,
I mean Them Bones, Wood, Rooster, Down in a Hole, Angry Chair.
I gotta tell you this story. My friend just reminded me of this recently. Called me just to like mock me.
That's a good friend.
We were in college, and my roommate, this guy, got this album, Jar of Flies, and puts it on, and I was had just really gotten back walking with the Lord and like studying the Bible and just totally into it. And I started listening to this album, and it was so depressing and it was so sad. And I'm like, dude, I gotta write these guys a letter. And I literally wrote
Alice in Chains?
To Alice in Chains.
To try to save them.
Yeah.
No
and
way.
Like, gospel message for them.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And I got like this form letter back, like, thank you so much for your interest in the band or something.
Oh, really? Yeah, it was just like written by their tour manager or something, probably.
But my friend was just, reminded me of that the other day. He's like, dude, remember when you wrote them?
Yeah, maybe Lane Staley's in heaven now because of you, dude.
Gosh,
maybe he read that
and
he never responded, but something resonated there, you know.
Awesome. But yeah, that's kind of how I felt about them.
Yeah, I love that band. I just like even later stuff. I mean, I even think the stuff they put out now is great, even though it's Jerry Cantrell is the only vocalist, because he used to do. A lot of people don't know that either. That he did a lot of the vocals even when Lane Staley was still the lead vocalist. Jerry Cantrell did a lot of vocals in there in certain songs. But you know, Staley was just.
Yeah,
I mean, that guy's vocals were just amazing.
You know, I was thinking though, if I had to go my fifth favorite, it would probably have to be Johnny Cash.
Okay.
Get some country in there,
okay.
And I love especially the later Johnny Cash. Yeah, I just dig. He just
later,
like
cool how much later?
Like right before he died, he put out a couple albums, America, something.
America 4.
And there was at least a handful of really religious, like really Christian kind of tunes, and like my favorite is "Man Comes Around." When the man comes around, love that song. One of my all-time favorites.
And that's one of the newer ones.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's great.
I got to listen to some of that. The newer. I've heard a lot of the old stuff. But I think the only newer one I heard was that 9 Inch Nails cover.
Yeah, which is great.
Yeah.
But yeah, When the Man Comes Around is a great tune.
Okay.
So yeah.
Nice.
But yeah, and the old stuff. Probably because my dad used to listen to a lot of country growing up, and like old school, right? In the 70s. And
yeah.
So a lot of good memories. Just
Hank Williams and Patsy Cline. And
yeah. Hank Williams Jr. too, and then Waylon Jennings.
Oh yeah. Merle Haggard, some of those guys. See, that's kind of country I like, the old school kind of stuff.
Yeah, the new stuff to me just sounds weird.
Yeah, with the exception of Josh Turner.
I don't know who that is.
He's good. You should check him out. He's the only current country artist that I would consider. So to me, in order to be an actual country artist, you have to have a slide guitar. And at least 3 or 4 songs on your album.
Yep.
That's what makes it for me.
I agree.
A lot of the what they call now pop country pop or whatever they call it. It's like that's not really country. It's like, I mean, it sounds like pop music, but if the singer has like a southern accent, it must be country. It's country music. It's like, but all the instruments sound like not country. So what are you talking about?
A little banjo's good too.
Yeah, banjo. You know, you want some guy blowing on a jug, and you want one of those washboard,
But
things.
See, to me, somebody who's like if you're going to be like one of my favorite all time. It's gotta be a thing where like you hear their voice or their music and you just know instantly who it is.
Oh, okay.
Even without the voice, like,
it's gotta be really distinct.
Like Johnny Cash, he had that like locomotive sound to all his songs, sound like you're listening to a train.
So you think you would know? So like if I found a song by Johnny Cash that you've never heard before, and I played it and I did no vocals, you'd be able to go, nope, that's Johnny Cash.
I would say most of the time, probably.
Okay.
Yeah, but yeah, even like the Police definitely had like that really original. Van Halen, I mean, you could tell the drums, the guitar is just nobody sounded like that.
Right.
Also, ZZ Top. Love ZZ Top. They're same thing. You hear their sound, it's just like
it's unique, right? Even though the music style is not unique, but what they did with
the way they
is
did
unique.
it, yeah, and
that's always kind of cool. I just thought of this is probably not really it's kind of related. It's not really related to the kind of music we're talking about, but Rage Against the Machine.
Yeah,
did you ever hear any of their stuff?
I did. It's kind of too old.
Okay, because their guitarist Tom Morello, I think his name is like that for me. Like he can even be playing with another band. Yeah, and I'll hear it and I go, oh my gosh, that's, and I'll look it up. Oh my gosh, it is Tom Morello. You know, it's like it's such a unique, and it's a guitar. I mean, it's not like he has some weird new instrument or something. It's just something that he's doing there that just sounds totally different to me. It's like a new style with the same.
Yeah, Eddie Van Halen had that too.
Right,
like you could tell if he was like when he played. I think he played on a Michael Jackson song, right? Beat It, I believe.
Yeah, well, yes, I think.
Or there's like a story behind that.
There is a story behind that, yeah. And I want to say it's that he played on it, but like the I could be totally getting this wrong. But like the lead guitar part in that was not actually Eddie Van Halen. Yeah. I could be off here, but yeah, he's credited to that song, yes.
But even like the Police, Andy Summer, his guitar, totally original, unique, just very.
Makes you wonder, like, if they're tuning it a different way, like they have it set to a different.
Okay, he was always messing with really kind of unique, equipment, and I mean, same with Eddie Van Halen, like created his own guitar,
right?
Out of scraps, you know,
right. Well, it's like that other guy that did that. What was his name? Les Paul.
Oh, did he? Really? I know it's a famous guitar, but I don't know anything about Les Paul.
Oh man! All right. Well, before go ahead.
Real quick, I just remembered another one of my favorite. It's kind of a random one. There's a movie called Begin Again, and it's about
Mark
music.
Ruffalo?
Yeah, about the music industry, and they have the soundtrack is really really cool.
Okay, I've never seen the movie or heard of the soundtrack.
You'd like it. You would. And Adam Levine is in the movie. Okay. And he's in the soundtrack, obviously. And I'm not like a huge Adam Levine fan.
Yes, you are. You got his posters up in your bedroom.
Yeah, very sexy. But the soundtrack's really cool. Keira Knightley sings on it too.
Okay. That's right. It's her and Mark Ruffalo, the two main characters.
Yeah.
Right? Okay.
It's just kind of a fun, lighthearted.
Is it like La La Land?
I don't know.
You ever see that one with was it Ryan Gosling and Emma Stone? I think that was another one of those modern day musical kind of. It's pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. And I'm not a big fan of musicals generally, but there are a few musicals that I really like.
Yeah, I gotta see that. My wife keeps telling me I gotta see it. But...
Has she seen it?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think every woman in the world saw it when it came out because it's a musical.
Yeah.
Is perk number one. Perk number two is Ryan Gosling. Ryan Gosling. All the women like that guy for some reason.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know why. They look nothing like me. He looks nothing like me, so I don't understand. That's why I tell my wife, and she's like, "Oh, that did fun." I go, I'll ask her to watch the movie. Do you find that guy attractive? And she'll be like, "Yeah, he doesn't look anything like me." And it's funny because like some of the she'll ask me that sometimes. She's like, "Well, of all the women in Hollywood or whatever, like who do you like find attractive?" You know, because I find that like most of the women that other guys would say that about, I'm like, she's okay. I mean, I don't know. But most of the ones that I've said, and I think, well, I think she looks not like my wife, but there's kind of some of the similar features and stuff, you know. I'm like, oh, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, me too.
So, see, babe, at least I have a type, you know, and you're it. You know? But anyway, it's kind of funny. But before we leave the music real quick, so let's go through your top 5 here and see if you can give me a favorite song from each one.
Okay.
So, Van Halen.
Drop Dead Legs.
Okay. Boy, you didn't have to think about that. Drop Dead Legs. I'm not sure I even heard that song.
You'll love it.
Is that one of their obscure...
1984.
Wasn't a single, though.
I don't think so.
Okay. All right. Drop Dead Legs. Is that a sexual... Sounds like a sexual song.
Probably. A lot of them were.
Sounds like a was that ZZ Top, Legs.
Yeah. She's got legs, yeah.
Or Tush. They had a lot of sexual songs, ZZ Top. All right, and the Police.
Oh, favorite Police song?
Yeah.
That's tough. Probably Murder by Numbers.
Okay. I think I've heard that one. Is it off Synchronicity?
I think so.
Okay.
Almost didn't make the album.
Oh, yeah?
It was like a last minute. Yeah.
See, that's amazing to me sometimes. Like, you hear that all the time. Like, a more recent example in the Christian music, do you know Ryan Stevenson? Eye of the Storm. In the eye of the storm. You never heard that song?
No.
Oh, look, that was one that wasn't even supposed to be on his album. And they wrote it like last minute, threw it on the album, and that's the song that put him on the charts. Like, that's, everybody knew him after that, you know?
Yeah, the Murder by Numbers, it was like a last minute thing, and they just like played it in one take, and that was it.
Yeah.
Just boom.
Yeah. And there's so many bands like that. Where it's like, I don't even like that song. I just wrote it. I wrote it in 5 minutes in the dressing room before we went out to play, and now it's the one song everybody loves, you know?
Yeah.
And then they usually hate that song. But, all right, so Murder by Numbers. All right, how about Bach? What's a favorite Bach song?
Oh, jeez. I don't know if I could give you a piece. So it wouldn't be a song. Zach taught me this. It's a piece. It's not a song.
Oh, I thought you were saying the song was called Peace.
So his favorite, it would have to be one of his partitas.
Whoa. Don't be getting all foreign on me.
Because there's one particular called Giga, and I'm sure there's multiples, but that's So
Giga.
Yeah.
What was the first word you said? Partita. Partita.
Yeah. Don't ask me what that means.
It's not a party.
It's just what it is.
Partita. Okay. So wait,
like a short little.
Yeah, I guess this is more a question for Zach than you, but I mean, like, so he's saying that a song, like, it can only be called a song if there's lyrics?
I think so. I don't know. I think so.
Interesting.
I just know, like, when you're talking about classical music, it's a piece.
It's a piece, right? But like, if I'm going to write, let's say you go like on Soundgarden.
Yeah.
Soundgarden has some instrumentals. Metallica has instrumentals on their albums. Would you call that a piece?
Yeah, instrumental piece.
Really? Mm-hmm. So like Orion by Metallica is a piece. It's not a song.
Yep.
I don't know, man.
I believe.
I don't believe you.
Don't quote me.
You believe, I don't believe.
Okay.
I'm agnostic on this.
I'm pretty sure. 80%.
All right. All right, Miles Davis.
Blue and green.
Okay. Wow, you're just blown. See, I would have a hard time with this. Like if the tables were turned around and you were asking me these questions, if I could even give you 5 favorites, and then if you asked me to pick a favorite song, it would probably take me 5 minutes of thinking. I'd be going like, this one. Oh no, wait. Probably this one.
No,
okay,
I mean,
can I pick 5?
See, that's the thing. If you give me more time, I'd probably do that. But if I just off the top of my head, what I listen to the most, like what would I go to first? That's what. Yeah.
So blue and green.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, and lastly, Temple of the Dog with their one album.
Yes.
What's your favorite song on that one?
Probably gotta be Times of Trouble.
Okay.
Probably.
Not even one of the singles. Again, you're picking some of the obscure ones. That's cool, man.
Yeah.
Because they just had 2 singles off there, right? Hunger Strike and Say Hello to Heaven, I think, right?
Yeah. Say Hello. Yeah, that's a tough one. That's one of my favorites, but yeah.
See, for me to answer that question, I would have to remove Hunger Strike. Only because that song stands out on the album because Eddie Vedder has very prominent lead vocals in it, and I love the 2 of them together.
Yeah, it was very cool. It wasn't my favorite song on the album, though. No.
Yeah. Well, that's what I mean. I don't necessarily think it's my favorite song, but it's hard for me to, because one of my things is like 2 vocalists to me is always awesome. So it's already putting it above on a different plane.
Yeah, some good harmony is always great.
Nice. So what was the one you said?
Times of Trouble.
Times of Trouble. Okay. Nice. Cool.
Yeah, there's a couple songs on the album that are just kind of lame, but most of them are really good.
Like what's the one about Wooden Jesus? Yeah, I was gonna say I bet you don't like that one lyrically.
Or Reaching Down.
Which was hard because I mean all those guys are born again Christians.
Oh yeah.
So it's so weird for them to write a song like Wooden Jesus.
What's so sad is a lot of these guys are dead now. It's
except for Eddie.
Yeah.
My man Eddie's still going strong, you know? But I mean, I've always thought almost all the other grunge singers from the 90s are gone, all of them. Except some of the more obscure, like Mudhoney or maybe some of those bands that most people don't know.
Smashing Pumpkins.
Yeah, he's still there too. Yeah. I always forget Smashing Pumpkins just because I think they're from LA, aren't they?
I don't know, a little different sound.
Or no, San Francisco maybe. They're not from, I don't think they're from Seattle,
Yeah, I think
is
you're
my
right.
point. But
I don't remember, but...
I mean, some of the first couple albums I think could definitely be considered the grunge, like Seattle.
Yeah.
It sounds like Seattle grunge.
Yeah. Yeah. They're definitely grunge. They're pretty good.
They're still around.
Mm-hmm.
Haven't heard a lot of the newer stuff, but...
Mm-mm. Mm-mm.
Yeah. Cool. All right. That's it, man. See you later.
Sweet.
Ready? Going some politics?
Yeah.
All right, man. What do you think?
Let's do it.
Well, what do you think?
What do I think about politics? Vanity of vanity.
That's right.
All is vanity.
So, where are you at politically? Are you a follow the government all the time kind of guy, like people in office? Are you more of a talk about issues that are facing our country kind of guy, or a little bit of both?
Jeez, that's a good question. I guess probably more issues. Hard to distinguish. Although, I don't know, it seems like no matter who gets in there, the issues tend to remain the same.
Mm-hmm.
Trump didn't build the wall.
He didn't?
No, he didn't finish the wall.
And you think he should have?
I don't think he even got close. And Mexico didn't pay for it.
Right.
We spent more money under Trump than I think Obama.
Okay.
So I don't know. Sometimes you just get discouraged. Like no matter who gets in there, it just all stays the same.
You don't think whoever is in office is really going to make any difference?
I mean, they make a difference. No, they do for sure. But it seems to be minor.
You strike me as a big fan of Joe Biden.
Yes. You say Jill?
Yeah,
Dr. Jill?
Dr. Jill.
She's amazing.
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
yes. You. As soon as you walked through the door today, I thought to myself, that man is a Joe Biden,
Did you see the
Kamala Harris fan.
Yeah, Biden Harris.
Yeah, Biden Harris 2028.
No, I think Joe Biden's great in that he's like the picture. What would you? He's like if you had, in the dictionary looked up like corrupt politician.
Yeah,
like it's Joe Biden. He's like perfect.
He's the epitome of
exactly of hyperbole.
Yeah, I love when people get the reference. You mispronounced every word in your show. If that is not the epitome of hyperbole.
Yeah.
He's great. Did you see he's playing in Solving?
No.
Yeah.
I've seen him. I saw him.
I've never seen
Poly.
him. Will you go?
Yeah.
Because my wife won't go with me.
Oh, yeah. He's
she
great.
doesn't like him. She doesn't think he's funny. He bothers her. She probably would go with me, like if I really pushed
hilarious.
it. But I'd rather go with somebody who likes him already. So yeah. And you can bring Aaron or whoever. I don't care. I just want someone to tag along with. You know.
Oh,
so.
me and the kid. You know, Aaron too. We all watched almost all his.
Okay. Yeah. I've never seen him live. I'd love to see him live.
Improv was so great.
Okay.
I think that was the best.
Oh, the CD?
I don't know. It's on YouTube. Him at the improv. So funny. He does like the ER visit.
Oh yeah.
And like
I thought that was yeah. I thought isn't that I Walked on the Moon?
I don't know, maybe.
I have that one, yeah. The Fig Noons, yeah, and the ER, yeah. Tell him you're shot.
Okay, so back to politics.
Oh, are we on politics? Okay.
A big Brian Regan fan is Dennis Miller.
Yes.
And he's probably my favorite political commentator / comedian.
Well, because even his comedy, he used to be on the Weekend Update or whatever on SNL.
And
yeah,
it's a
he's
bummer
funny.
Because he quit. He used to have a podcast, and he
really
doing it because he just couldn't take it anymore.
He couldn't take what
it was
the
also
heat?
just depressing, and he just kind of got sick of it.
Yeah.
But anyways, yeah, I thought he was great.
Yeah, he's funny.
I think even like his insights. I think he was.
Right.
About a lot
Well, because he's more right leaning.
Yeah, no.
So of course he's right on everything he says.
Yeah,
I mean, when people agree with you, it just means they're right.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So the question of Joe Biden, he's like the classic corrupt politician, just perfect. I mean, a lot of them, most of them, maybe even are corrupt to some degree, but he's just like the perfect.
Well, and he's been in politics for a million years.
Cookie cutter, corrupt politician. Says whatever you tell him to say. Mm-hmm. doesn't care.
Well, I mean, people have always said like the president is the face, right? They say he doesn't really do a lot. He's just the face. But I think with Biden, I don't know if I've ever seen it more true, perfect. Because I literally don't think he even knows what's happening most of the time. I think he's just telling people what, go out and tell them this, go out and tell them this.
And there's dudes that lie, like, all politicians lie at some point. Trump lied. I'm sure Bush lied.
Never.
I'm sure Trump lied a lot. But I think Biden's one of those dudes that I think lies and doesn't even think about the fact that he's lying. It just comes out like natural to him. Like he just says whatever you tell him to say. He doesn't even think if it's true or not. He doesn't care.
He probably doesn't know if it's true or not, exactly. Right? I mean, it's so to me that's not really a lie.
Yeah, if you believe it, it's not a lie.
Or even if you don't necessarily believe it, but you don't not believe it. Like you're just like undecided. You're like, I don't know. Maybe it's true. Maybe it's not.
From Seinfeld. George would tell Jerry, it's not a lie if you believe it.
I never saw that one. I got to go back and rewatch that show.
Great show.
Because I've only seen probably a handful of episodes, maybe 10, 12 episodes.
I think it's an age thing, because I know a lot of young kids think Seinfeld's horrible.
Well, I thought he was funny. I still listen to his, he has a stand-up album that I have, I'm telling you for the last time. In fact, I just took Asher to the doctor this morning before we did this. And we were sitting there, and he was sitting up on the thing, and I said, you're sitting on that butcher paper. And he goes, Butcher, what are you talking about? I said, it's a comedian. He says, sometimes I like to bring a pickle with me and set it right there on the table next to me in case the doctor wants to wrap the whole thing up for a to-go order.
Yeah. He just did a new one that was really good.
Oh, really?
Like a year ago. Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I'll have to check it out. I thought he was kind of retired.
I think it was Netflix.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's where a lot of them are now. The last couple of Brian Regan ones I haven't heard either, because those have been out on Netflix. And I like to listen to it. Like I don't know. And people think I'm weird because, especially with Brian Regan, they're like, his facial features are a big part of the show. So they're like, I want to watch it. And watching it live, of course, I get too. But like for me, most of my stand-up comedy I'll listen to in the car. Like if I have a long car. See, that's not Baroque to me. That doesn't put me... Like I've been on long car drives on the way home. I'll put on stand-up comedy because it keeps me awake. It makes me laugh.
I remember in high school listening to Eddie Murphy.
Oh, yeah. Which one? Delirious or Raw?
Probably. Whatever the real famous one.
Yeah. Well, those were both pretty big. Raw and Delirious was first, and I don't think they had, or at least I never saw the video. I just listened to it. Those I did see the videos for, but that was back in the day. I think that was way back before I even had a CD
when
player.
He dressed like Michael Jackson.
Yes, yeah, and the red. Yeah, see, that was Delirious.
Yeah,
when he had the red suit on.
Him on Saturday Night Live, best Saturday Night Live.
Oh, dude,
ever.
Yeah, he's funny.
Nobody could touch him.
Oh, dude, he did some really. Was it the buckwheat? Yeah, he did Buckwheat Sings.
Yeah.
That ooh napa nuna.
Mr. Robinson's Neighborhood.
Yeah. Who is it?
Yeah. And then the white guy for your day or something.
Oh, yeah, that one was great. Dude, you watch that one now?
Yeah.
With everything going on in the world, it's fascinating. When you see that, it was he goes to the bank.
Yeah.
And the one guy's trying to help him. He's like, I'll take over, Smith. Go take your lunch break. And he comes in and he goes, so no collateral, huh?
Yeah.
Well, all right, I'm just going to give you millions of dollars. Really? Yeah, no one has to know. And then they start laughing. Yeah, that's great, dude. That's back when comedy, I think, was a little more clever.
Oh, yeah.
Like, it was a little more intelligent.
Yeah.
Where now it's just, I don't know, it's not the same.
Yeah, now you got to be afraid that you're going to get...
Yes!
That's probably why Dennis Miller quit, because he's like, I'm just going to get canceled.
Right.
So.
Right. Which is a bummer, because we need more people like that to not quit. Mm-hmm. Because every time... it's like that phrase, every time you hear a bell, an angel gets its wings. Mm. Right? It's like every time somebody comes out and apologizes for something they're really not sorry for because they're scared that they're going to get canceled, that agenda just gets pushed farther. Not agenda, but that thing gets pushed farther and farther to where it becomes more and more of a world where you can't say anything that you believe because you're worried about what other people are going to do about it. It's like, come on, just... I mean, I'm not saying you should be offensive just to be offensive. Yeah. I mean, there's being offensive, and then there's just holding a position that someone disagrees with. So that's different,
which makes me think of politics, and at the end of the day, it's a weird balance. So you've got what you're just saying, like this cancel culture thing plays right into politics because it gives the political powers the ability to silence people, right? That's kind of where it's all heading, right?
Right.
So that the dominant political people can silence the minority and all that.
Right.
And you see that, and you see it come to when it comes to persecution of Christians, because Satan is behind all of it, because he's the god of this age. So, but then you see the rulers of the world, pitted against God and trying to destroy his people. But then you also see in the scriptures God saying, hey, obey, or the Apostle Paul, obey the rulers because they've been put in place by God. So it's like this weird...
Right. Unless they ask paradox. You to do something that goes against God. Right? That's That's is that a caveat? Am I using that word properly?
Yeah, I think that's about right.
I try to use big words to sound smart, but then most of the time I'm probably not even using them right, so I sound even more stupid than if I didn't. So caveat.
I think you nailed it.
That's the
caveat. Yeah.
That's different than caviar.
Yeah.
Caviar is something totally different.
And has it? Yeah. The T isn't silent.
Right. Yeah. Maybe it's a French word. Caviar.
So
But so I mean that's kind of the whole thing with it. But.
So to me, politics is kind of like this game we play, but at the end of the day, what's really going on is good and evil. The people of God being, persecuted by the rulers of this world, who are, and like in Ephesians talks about the sons of disobedience. That Satan's at work in the sons of disobedience.
And who is that to you? Who's the sons of?
Well, anybody who's not a believer. So Satan's at work in the world, the whole world, and the more power you get, the more he can use you.
So the sons of the disobedience to you is those that are unsaved.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So to me, it's like again, a great way to look at politics is just to read what Paul's saying in Ephesians, I believe, that it's we don't fight against flesh and blood.
Right.
So you can get all upset at people like Biden, because they are evil, but he's just a puppet. He's just a tool of Satan to do evil.
Yeah. So do you think then that the whole government system is being in control of, not in control of, I guess it's the wrong, is being influenced by Satan to the point, but of course God, like you said, God could stop it at any moment. Like he's allowing that to happen. But you think that as a whole, that system is that way, and do you think it's been that way since it started, or do you think when it started,
to some degree, and I think that's what was so beautiful. Well, beautiful, man. If you're what was smart about the founders' vision was, hey, they knew, hey, people are evil. All governments become corrupt. So let's set up a system where we put all that into the equation ahead of time. And we use all that evil to try to make things somewhat just and good. And that's why you have capitalism. Capitalism isn't like a moral thing. It's just like, hey, people are out for their own interest. So let's use that so that there's at least a fair marketplace. And people's own self-interest will help other people because there's going to be competition and production. And so the guy who wants to make $1 million inventing such and such, well, he can make his millions, but then now everybody gets to benefit from what he develops and all that.
Okay. So are you a capitalism fan?
I think it's the best that anybody's ever come up with, yeah.
Okay. And you own your own business. So you see...
Yeah, it's competition.
Yeah.
Like if I don't want to pay my employees, if I'm stingy and whatever, they can go work for somebody else who will pay them better, and then they'll have better employees. They'll get more work. They'll have better business.
Right.
So it more or less helps. It kind of all works out. Unless you have monopolies that can kind of do whatever they want. Or if you have government intrusion, where the government, and then you get that whole crony capitalism thing where the government's now involved, so now the government's giving kickbacks to their people.
Which kind of makes it not capitalism anymore.
Yeah, it screws up the whole system.
It kind of defeats the whole purpose.
Exactly.
Oh, man.
So, yeah. I think there are people who can make a difference for sure, and I think we should pray for our leaders, just like Paul said. And
but what are we praying for? Like, let's talk about this for a minute. So if we've already established, at least as far as you and I yours and I's personal beliefs that God's in control of all things, and anything that happens, right, he's allowing to happen. And if we're going to say, let's say that the government's corrupt and the Lord's allowing the government to be corrupt, that he must have a reason and a purpose for it. So if we go into prayer and we're praying and asking God what? To make it not corrupt, to make it better for, so like why would we be asking for something that could potentially be against God's will? Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think, well, first of all, I would say we do it because Paul, inspired by the Holy Spirit, said to pray for leaders and those in power so that we might live quiet and peaceful lives. So even though persecution happens and corruption happens, it doesn't mean that that's always God's will or even is God's will. God will use it for good, but so we should pray for that, and I don't think we should like long for persecution or run into it. So yeah, we should pray to avoid it, knowing that it will still happen. Jesus said, "You will be persecuted."
Right. Does that seem like a kind of like a contradiction, though, in a sense? Like, I understand what you're saying. That Paul said to pray for our leaders. And I was going to jump in there and say, yeah, pray for our leaders, but pray for what? But then kind of the point you're making is so that we would live quiet and peaceful lives, which sounds like a peaceful government. Obviously, a government that's tyrannical or that's corrupt or that's evil, that's going to be less of a peaceful life for us that are living under that government.
Yes.
So he's saying to pray for that, but then at the same time, it's not like God can't just change that whenever he wants. I mean, he could squash the government and just set the whole thing up his way. Yeah. He could do any of that, but he doesn't. So the fact that he hasn't yet, I shouldn't say he doesn't or he won't. Right now where we stand, he hasn't. We have what we have. Yeah. So, I mean, my philosophy has always just been kind of like, well, if that's what we have, then that's the way God wants it for now. So then for me to pray against that and say, all right, Lord, I want you to change stuff around. I see that you have it this way and you're allowing this to happen, but I'm praying that you'll change it to make my life easier.
Yeah, but see, that's where we differ in what prayer, how we're told to pray and what to think about prayer.
Well, I think we'd agree on how we're told to pray, but I guess what I'm saying is when we take how we're told to pray versus that philosophy that I just mentioned, like with God in control, there almost seems like a problem there. Like, you can't have both.
So for example, what's that Old Testament passage? If my people called by my name would humble themselves and pray and turn from the wicked way, I would hear and heal their land. Right. So I believe that God calls us to pray, and He uses that means of our prayer to accomplish His ends. So God says, my will is X, but that X will not happen until my people pray for X, kind of idea. So I do think even though we see what we see going on, we are called to pray that God would intervene, and when He deems it right, He will, or He won't. But think about when the U.S. started, like, God allowed that to happen, and it prospered, and it's provided a lot of great things over couple hundred years, but also a lot of evil, but freedom and good. Right. But then it becomes corrupt because people are corrupt and more corrupt.
So do you view it then as, okay, so let's say we started with what we started with. We would say it was, I don't think either one of us is trying to say that when the country was founded, it was free of all evil and corruption and greed and all that, right? It's always, it's a somewhat man-made, or of course, so it's going to have flaws. Yeah. But then when we compare it back then to today, you and I would also both agree that we've come a long way in the way of evil, in the way of corruption, much more so than back then.
Well, that's what's weird. Yeah. So in some ways we're doing better, right? So we don't have slavery. True. So true. A big improvement there. But then you look at in other ways we've gone downhill. So, yeah. So I guess it's a little bit of both.
Right. So then from your perspective, like, is it more than back to the prayer thing? Is it more that Like, is it up to us in a sense? Like, do you feel like the more people that are praying for certain things, in this case, our country, and the way it's going, like the more of us that are praying for our government to be less corrupt, for the evil things, what you and I see as evil things coming into the culture to go away, you think he's more likely to say, okay, I was kind of up in the air on this, but I've got thousands of people over here praying. It's filling up the prayer meter, so then I can therefore now go through with this.
No, because I think God also is ordaining that his people pray. Like, his people are praying because he's ordaining that, and he's putting that in their hearts. So like in the Old Testament where he says the cry of the people came to God's ears, that kind of language, right?
Sure.
And he acts.
Right.
And I think that's part of what God has revealed. That's what he waits for the cry of his people, and then he acts. And part of it is sometimes it's his people, or his people even, deserve they need discipline, so he allows that discipline for a time, and then he brings relief.
Well, that's why the understanding of, maybe not the understanding, my understanding, I guess I'll put it that way, my understanding of prayer from Scripture, that it's not so much to change circumstances, but it's more for the person praying. That makes more sense to me. And again, you know how I feel about making sense. That's not the end all for me. Something making sense is not the end all. But in this case, I'm just saying it does make sense. Doesn't mean it's right. But it does make more sense with everything what we just said about God being in control, all this. So and I believe we can pray for anything we want. Like, I don't think God's up there going, Ryan, don't pray for that. Ryan, don't say that. I don't think he doesn't care what we pray for, but I think we have to have the opinion or the outlook that, like Jesus did, even in the garden. He's like, if there's another way, then take this cup from me, right? So even Jesus was praying like, Lord, is there another way to save these people? Because
but not my will.
Right, but then he says, but not my will, but yours be done. And I think that whenever we pray for, that should be our attitude.
Of course,
right?
Yeah, because we're ignorant in some cases. Like, God has revealed his will in some ways to us, and we can pray according to that will, but there's a lot that hasn't been revealed, so we pray in ignorance, and we say, God, may your will be done. But yeah, no, I don't buy that prayer is mainly just for our own personal benefit. I do believe that that's an important part of prayer, for sure. But as I just read the epistles and what Paul is saying about prayer, how he commands them to pray or tells them to pray, teaches them, but also how he says he prays or he asks them for prayer. It's almost always in terms of so that something would happen. Pray that such and such happens, you know.
Well, even with his own thorn in the flesh, but he said he played three times, okay. But then he's like, the Lord's not removing it. So he was able to say, okay, kind of similar to not my will, but yours be done. Yeah. And then Paul even took it a step further where he's like, give me more. Right? It was almost like he came to a realization that the more that he suffers in the flesh, the more spiritually it's going to be better. So he's like, all right, now I'm seeking to fill up the things lacking in the sufferings of my flesh.
Interesting, yeah.
So I mean, it's just this whole...
Yeah, that's so weird to think about how we can view suffering in such a negative light naturally and be afraid of it. But then get to a place where you're like, wow, this is actually really good for me. I'm going to pray for more.
Right. Well, and I'm always just floored by stories of people like that. I always use Johnny Erickson Tada, right, as a good example. Or I've used the guy Nick something that was born with no arms or legs. He's a surfer. Yeah. And, and people like that go around. I mean, it's one thing to suffer that, right? Like Johnny Erickson getting in the diving accident where paralyzed her. Yeah. It's one thing to go through those things. Lots of people go through those things. But the people that... Okay, so there's people that go through those things. Then there's people that have come to accept those things as part of their life, right? That in and of itself is admirable to me because I don't know what I would do in that circumstance. But then there's the few people that go a step beyond that, and they're thankful that happened to them. Yes. And they're even asked, if you could go back in time and have that not happen to you, would you have it not? And they say no. They said, who I am today is based solely on what happened right there. So I don't want it any other way. That just floors me because I'm like, oh my gosh, I want that mindset. You know, that's that's
so
beautiful.
So this is interesting because I've been struggling with anxiety disorder for 30, 40 years or whatever.
Mm-hmm. So since when you're like 35. You're not gonna. The old guy jokes are just gonna keep coming. You know.
So what was my point?
I don't know. I cut you.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, anxiety.
So, I was just talking to my wife about this. Like, if I could go back 30 whatever years ago and go and not have that happen, like not go through anxiety disorder, would I do that? And I was like, I don't know, because I'd be a different person.
Right.
Like, it was brutal at times, but yeah, it's so humbling, and I know it brought me to God in deeper ways, and I don't think I wouldn't have been the same person. I would have.
But not everybody that goes through those things feels that way, right? You meet a lot of people that are bitter and angry, and in some ways, well, not in some ways, in complete ways, it turns them away from God. Like, they can't even fathom the idea of a loving God that would allow that to happen to them or to happen to anybody else.
Well, I guess I would just say, from my perspective, it's because I knew the Lord. I was born again. So going through it, I always knew God was with me. Even in the darkest times, God would show up and get me through it. And so it's not like I was ever just left in the dark and on my own.
Did you ever feel that? Have you ever felt in your life that you were left? Or have you always felt that?
Yeah, in moments, for sure.
Okay.
Especially going through, like, panic disorder, definitely. Well, because I didn't know what it was.
Right.
So I just thought, like, wow, I've lost my mind or whatever.
Right.
But
That's the hardest. See, that's the hardest part. The hardest times for me during the panic stuff that I deal with was the years and years of not knowing.
Exactly.
Once I had a diagnosis and a understanding of what was happening, it didn't make it, it did make it easier, but it wasn't like it all just went away.
Yeah.
And I wasn't suffering with that anymore. I still suffer with that in some cases, but at least I know what's happening. Yeah. There's something powerful about knowing what's happening. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Like that changes the whole game.
Yes. And so that was the question, was like, would I go back to my 18-year-old self and explain it all so that I wouldn't go through that?
Right.
For how many years?
Right.
And I'm like, nah, I don't know if I would. I don't know. God allowed it, and I'm sure, I know it was for good.
Right.
Because before it happened to me, I was an arrogant, punk who was just doing my own thing and probably headed down a really dark path. So I'm like, okay, God, you did good work.
So it's almost like a mercy thing. Like you see it as like, had the Lord have not put me through that hard time, I might have ended up in a worse place. Yeah,
absolutely. I have no doubt about that. Okay. Yeah, especially spiritually, but probably even in every way. Yeah, no question. Yeah. And it's what's interesting about that too. Like, you're talking about suffering, anxiety. I've been learning this. It's like you want to avoid the panic attacks because they're so uncomfortable, right? Just like suffering.
Yes.
But then you learn, like, no, actually I want to go towards that because I'll learn how to overcome it, right? And then I'll be free of it. Yes. And in a sense, suffering can be like that too, right? Where you go into it and you learn, like Paul said, you learn to be content even when you're struggling or suffering. And,
right. Yeah. When I went through my therapy for anxiety back 10, 12 years ago now. That was one of the things that he had told me in the beginning, was that he said, Ryan, you're not going to believe me right now, but you're going to get to a point in our therapy sessions where you're actually looking forward to your anxiety and your panic attacks. Yeah. And I almost just canceled the calls right then. I was like, no, I don't need to pay you anymore or talk to you about anything because you're nuts. You're crazy. You don't know what you're talking about. But then he's right. Yeah. Towards the end of it actually got, because it was exhilarating. Because what panic and anxiety does to you is it holds you with fear. Yeah. And when you get to the point where you no longer fear it, and you're actually looking forward to it, this is all right, let's go. This is great. Because every time I get past it, it's like exhilarating. It becomes like a drug almost. Yeah. And you're like, all right, let's have a panic attack because I know afterwards I'm going to feel powerful. Yeah. And it's this weird paradox thing, No,
it's a total paradox. I haven't gotten there yet. Like, I've had glimpses of it, but there's still things where I'm like, oh man, I don't want to do that. Right. And so but it's you gotta know and believe that it's not like what you're afraid of isn't real.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And you're gonna be okay. And that's so
right.
Haven't gotten there quite yet, but
right. You'll get there, my friend.
Yeah. I'm getting there. Yeah.
Yeah.
So how do we get on that?
I don't know.
Politics.
Who knows, man? Well, that's kind of political. I mean, because we were talking about the government and the government being corrupt and God being in control. So we're kind of merging spirituality and politics. But for guys like us, that's going to happen, right? Because I think most of our political views are going to have a lot to do with our belief in God and that whole thing. But yeah, let's get back to politics before we jump full into spirituality. What would you say are some of the, I guess, list as many as you want, and we can talk about whichever ones you want to, but some of the biggest issues in our country, whether it's government or just corrupt people or just, I mean, you can go anywhere anywhere you want with that.
Biggest issues in our country.
Or the world, or, you know, this living room, you know, whatever.
Well, so the biggest issue everywhere is the people who are there, right? It's people.
Okay.
We're all corrupt at the core.
So the solution is just to wipe them all out. Is that what you're saying?
Which God did once. Right. Except for Noah. And
except he left 8 people.
Yeah, and then they started over again.
Right.
And he will eventually do it again. But so you start with that problem that people are corrupt, and so the people they vote for are going to be corrupt, and the more corrupt we get and the further down that road we go, the worse our government's going to be. So in a sense, we get what we deserve. But the biggest issue facing, so I would say it's all cyclical in a sense. It's the same stuff everybody's faced. It's people voting for their own self-interest and totally disregarding the interests of their neighbor.
Okay. Selfishness.
Yeah, and people acting in selfishness. So the mother who aborts her baby because she doesn't want to face the difficulties of being a mother.
Right.
Or the father who aborts his baby, same reason, doesn't want to take care of a child.
Or just abandons the woman.
Because
he's not ready to be a dad.
Because he wants to live his life and do his thing and be selfish. Marriages that fall apart because spouses don't want to sacrifice and love each other sacrificially. So, and then you vote for your own self-interest.
Yeah.
And then politicians can play off that and say, oh, if I offer XYZ to these people, then they'll vote for me.
Even though they're never going to do XYZ once they get in office.
Yes. Or they'll do a little bit, enough just to keep them coming back.
Right. You know? Well, that's what I hope starts happening here pretty soon, is that at bare minimum, at least people start awakening to that and say, look, we keep voting. And I get it. I understand why we're voting on issues. I understand, right? Yeah. I understand, like you just brought up, like abortion, right? If I'm pro-life, the odds on me voting for somebody who's pro-choice is slim in theory, because it's such a hot topic issue. It's a big deal, right? It's an important issue. But I hope people start waking up to the fact that it doesn't matter. Like, I can vote for a pro-life president or governor or whatever.
Yeah.
The reality is he's probably not going to do a whole lot, right? I mean, I know Roe v. Wade was overturned, which is so before that happened, I could have been like, nothing ever happens, because up to that point, really nothing has happened. You have all these conservative running for president, and like, oh, I'm pro-life, I'm going to end abortion. No, you're not going to end abortion. You're just not.
And then they would put in a Supreme Court justice who was actually a liberal. Right?
Yes, right, or who's pro-choice, right? Exactly, right. Yeah. And that's the whole thing. And so the Roe v. Wade thing, to me, honestly, is shocking. I never thought in a million years I would see that happen. So, I mean, I don't know how that happened. I'm still, honestly, over a year later, I'm still kind of shocked by it. Yeah. Like, I don't know how that happened, but my point is, I'm not trying to talk about that specific issue, but no matter what the issue is, right? Someone's pro First Amendment, Second Amendment, whatever. We vote for them for that reasons, but are they really going to do anything about it when they're in there?
I think that's an interesting point. What I would say is that the reason why the abortion thing is so important is because to me it's I don't know what the word would be. It's
a caveat.
It's a delineator. No, it's not a caveat. It's not caveat either. It's a delineator between good and evil, right? Like, so in other words, if you're a person who a politician say, yeah, I'm good with abortion, then I know that I can't really trust you on other stuff.
Right.
Right.
But to the pro-choice side, they think that's ridiculous that you feel that way, because to them it's like, what are you talking about?
Yeah, I think that's the good dividing line there, right? If you don't get that, then we can't agree on much else, probably. If you do get that, then we have a chance. Right. But if you think it's cool to kill babies, then sorry, we're not going to we're not going to see.
But I guess that's my point. Like, the pro-choice person most of them don't think it's okay to kill babies. They just don't believe that's what's happening. Okay, see, that's why I've always said that's really the question. Is like,
I think that's true to a point. I think there are many people who probably don't. They really do believe it's not a baby.
Right.
But I would say most people know deep down that it is, and those are just their arguments. That's what they tell themselves.
But so deep down to where they're not conscious of it, or they are conscious of it and they're suppressing it on purpose?
I think you can suppress it so much that it becomes unconscious.
Okay. Right.
But like, even Chris Rock did a whole skit about that.
That was great.
Like, no, I'm totally cool with killing babies. Like, you know what I mean? Like, he was just honest. Like, that's what we want.
Right.
Give us my, let me do that.
But most pro-choice, and you're right. Maybe it is suppressed to the point that they don't realize it. But most people when I get into that discussion about abortion and pro-life, pro-choice, most of the pro-choice, that's like toy boat. Pro-choice. Most of the pro-choice people that I talk with are. It's a matter of. Most of them would not say the words, "I agree that a woman should be allowed to kill her baby if she doesn't want it." Of course not. Right. Yeah. So it always, when in those discussions, it always becomes a matter of, when does life begin? And then that's where it's a sliding scale, right?
That's changing. I think that's changed. I think it's gotten.
I think there's a lot of prominent people, mostly in Hollywood, that will word it that way. That will say things like, "Yes, I know I'm killing a baby, and that's okay because it's my choice, it's my right, it's my body."
Exactly.
But I still don't think that's the majority of pro-choice people.
I think we're getting there, though. I think
really.
No, probably not majority, but but I do think it's becoming more okay to just admit, I'm killing a baby.
Right.
Also, like, who are you to tell me not to do that?
Well, I guess the point I would make, even if somebody said that to me, right? Let's say someone said, "Here's what I'm trying to say." My mind's going, woo. So in my mind, I'm thinking, the reason I don't buy that as much is because most of those people that may say that, they still have a limit on it. Like, for example, most of them wouldn't say, "What about 9-month abortion?" They'd say, "Oh, no way." Yeah. Well, why is that? It's because they think you're killing a baby at that point, but they don't think. Or if I say, "Well, what if I want to kill my 5-year-old?" They'd say, "No, you can't kill your 5-year-old."
What's the difference, though? The difference is it's becoming more and more clear that it's a baby.
It looks more like a person.
I can't dismiss it into my subconscious anymore. My conscious is now aware of it. I can't deny it anymore because you can see it, you can hear it. You can,
It's a weird example, but I've always used it like this: like vegetarians. Okay. They're against killing animals, right? I mean, at least ones that are doing it for moral reasons. Some people just do it for dietary. But the people like me, who spent 16 years as a vegetarian, I did it for moral reasons. I thought it was wrong to kill an animal, okay? And it used to upset me. Like, people that ate meat, back when I was an activist, like in the early days of my vegetarianism, I was an activist. I was really angry at people that were killing animals to eat them, right? Because I thought, that's murder. You're killing an innocent life, But I would still walk around all day, probably stepping on ants and bugs, and that's life, right? It's still life. Those things were alive before I stepped on them. I'm not purposely killing them, of course, but I'm still killing them. If I was that concerned about life, I'd be walking around. But why is it different to kill an animal? Why? Because it's bigger. it's more of an animal. Or even you go from the animals, right? You say people that eat meat, right? Like say, oh yeah, I eat meat, whatever. But then if you hear of another country that eats dogs and cats, it's horrific. What?
Yeah.
How dare you? How could you? I mean, you're killing and eating cats and dogs. What are you, Satan?
Yeah.
Like it's this whole different. It's like, well, what's the difference? India thinks we're evil because we eat cows. You know,
there's no difference.
Right. That's my point.
Yeah.
So but the more that it becomes obvious, like they've even said, like many women, and this is why they started doing this. Many women that will at least have a 3D ultrasound, and they see their child in there, even at however many months, where they could not survive on their own if they were born that day. But you see arms, legs, you see a heart, you hear a heartbeat, you see a head, you see all this. It's brings it to more of a reality as opposed to, I'm just having a procedure.
Yeah.
I'm just having a procedure done. It's like a surgery, it's like I'm getting a wart removed off my foot. There's no life there. It's just whatever. And I think that a lot of people convince themselves to believe that because it makes them feel better.
Yes.
But if they actually had a camera inside the womb as an abortion was happening, they would be horrified by what just happened.
There's like a famous lady who's now pro-life advocate who used to work for Planned Parenthood.
Yes,
That's the story. She saw like an ultrasound.
Yeah, wasn't that what the movie was made about?
Probably.
There was a movie made about it, I think.
I heard her story. It was,
Well, even the Roe from Roe v. Wade, right? I think she passed away now. I might be wrong about that.
She turned to
She became an anti-abortion person, and she regretted that. Oh, dude.
Geez.
Yeah.
But see so that's what I'm saying though, is like abortion to me is like that delineator. Like it's just a very obvious tell. Like, okay, I can or I can't vote for you.
Right.
Because But that doesn't mean abortion's like the end all be all of all moral atrocities. It's pretty bad.
Is there anything else you would put in that category of like voting for somebody? You'd say, if you're pro this, then I know I can't trust you, and vice versa?
I think that's just the most obvious, clear one. I think the trans thing is similar in that it should be, in my opinion, so obvious that's not okay.
Which level of trans? Are you talking about like to the kids? Or are you just talking about in general?
Any of it. It's all just to me so damaging, so warped and so harmful.
What is? Like allowing trans people to exist, or I mean, I want you to. That's why I'm trying to get you to be specific.
Destroy them.
Yeah, I know that's not what you mean, but I mean,
no, just promoting it.
Okay,
saying that it's good, that it's okay, that we should pay for it, that we should promote it, that we should, it should be understood as a mental disorder, as it always has been. Well, at least in my lifetime.
A gender dysphoria.
Yeah, and then and treat people with love and care who have it, and try to help them.
Okay.
Yeah, but don't say, "Hey, this is great."
Right.
And if your kid wants to transition, we're not going to tell you. We're just going to do it, and then because you might abuse them by telling them not to.
Right.
So, it's
well. So that's the level where I think you and I would definitely see eye to eye when we're talking about the idea of, like what a lot of the public school systems are trying to do, or something, trying to almost eliminate the parental role. Yeah. And say, it's like the school system saying to the parents, you're corrupting your children by not exposing them to these things. You're corrupting your children. Yeah. We're gonna come in and do your job as a parent. Yeah. We're gonna take them to get an abortion without telling you. We're gonna treat them as a girl if they're biologically male because they say they are, and we're not going to tell you about it. Yeah. They're going to go. I just had a friend a couple months ago that actually pulled his daughter out of the school because he found out at one of the meetings that his daughter was going by a different name. Yeah. And he's like, it's not a big deal. She's saying, call me this, whatever. Fine. But I'm her dad. Tell me about that, right? I need to know about this, right? It wasn't like it wasn't like transgender, like, oh, we're treating her as a boy, even though she's a girl. It was nothing like that. It was something simple like, my name is this, but I like to go by this. Yeah. So calling everybody at the school, the teachers, everybody's calling her by this name. Dad goes to the meeting. He's got the sheet. It's got some name on it. He's like, this isn't my daughter. Yeah. And they're like, isn't that your daughter right there? He's like, yeah. Oh, this is her name. You didn't know? No, I didn't know. How did I not know about that? It's like, parents need to have control. Not like, I'm not saying in a bad way, but like we need to be involved in this stuff, you know?
Well, of course. Well, versus who? Like, as opposed to who?
The school system.
You're going to tell me
right.
the school system should be more involved in my kid's life than I should be? Mm-hmm. And why would you say that? Like, because they know better, they're professionals.
Right.
To me, that's just evil. Like, so for example, primarily because God has ordained it that way. God has ordained that parents raise their children.
Correct.
And not only that, but who loves their kid more than a parent? Now you're going to say, well, some parents are abusive. Blah, blah, blah. Yeah, of course.
Right.
And the more down the slope our society goes, the worse the parents will be. But you tell me some random school teacher who loves my kid more than I do because they have a degree. Mm-hmm. That's ridiculous. That's stupid, and it's just evil.
Yeah.
Very upsetting. I mean, if I was raising young kids right now, I would probably be getting ready to move.
Right.
Because I'd be that concerned about it.
So do you think you think that would help? First of all, do you think that would help? Moving. And how long do you think that would help for? Well,
it would just help immediately until I could raise my kids without the government trying to transition them.
So you think like moving out of California to a more conservative state
I mean,
for the time being would be...
In California, you can still homeschool, so I guess I would just homeschool my kids.
Right.
And hopefully that stays legal.
That would be the turning, as you know, that would be the turning point for us.
Yeah.
We've looked at moving out of state for lots of reasons. I think that would be the one thing that would push me out no matter what.
Absolutely.
I was like, if you're telling me my kid's going to be forced to go to public school, especially the state of public schools in California right now, no way.
Yeah.
There is no way. There's nothing that could make me stay here after that.
Yeah, I agree. No, I mean, my kids are all grown now, so I'm not as concerned. But
right.
And I don't know if they'll all live in California when they have kids, or if they have kids. But
yeah, I doubt it. You guys will all end up back east somewhere, I bet.
Yeah, well, I kind of doubt it too. I'm thinking Colombia at this point.
Okay, out of the country completely. Maybe. Okay.
Depends on how things go.
Nice, man. So you move over there, you get your big drug lord company going, and you get some clout and some respect, and then I'll come over there and I'll work for you.
Sweet.
Sounds good, man.
Yeah. Import-export business going.
Yeah. Or you could import-export coffee, because that's legal, right? Isn't that a big coffee place?
Yep. No, it would be more of a retirement thing. My brother-in-law retired to Colombia already.
Isn't he from there, though?
He was born there.
Okay,
yeah. So
you're just bringing it back home.
They rent their place in Florida and live off of that in Colombia easily. They're just retired now.
So is that a serious consideration?
Yeah.
Like you guys are actually maybe looking...
Honestly, if I did it would be, to some degree, I'd be looking at it as possibly, maybe I would try to get involved in a church over there and do some type of...
Do they have churches over there?
Ministry. I think so.
I thought there's only churches in America.
Just reached Colombia.
America is the only Christian nation.
Well, the true church.
The true church in America. Yeah, that's where it was founded.
Yeah, where you wear
obviously
polyester suits.
Yeah, in Acts chapter 2, that was actually in Boston.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah, Colombia just elected a former leader of the rebel.
The Rebel Alliance.
Communist rebel. It's called the FARC, and they would sell drugs to make money to fight the government and do terrorism.
Nice.
And then they were just elected that dude president. So
they're like, hey, we need a change.
Yeah,
we've never done this before. Let's give it a shot. Wow.
Yeah.
Do you think your kids would follow you over there though?
Maybe. Yeah, and I'm not even saying that'd be a good idea. It might be a horrible idea. It could be a total disaster.
They'd let you guys go first and see how it went, and then they visit you a few times.
Yeah.
See how that went for you.
Yeah. So, yeah, we'll see.
Nice.
Very cool. California's insane.
Yeah.
It's sad because it's a beautiful place, but...
Once it's the weather, right? The weather's so nice, and it's just like, especially the part of California we're in.
Oh, it's amazing.
Where it's just, you can't beat it.
Yeah. Beautiful.
And me being born and raised here, it's like anytime I go anywhere else, it's like, whew.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's ultimately kind of what's keeping us from moving right now. Is like, because we love Tennessee. We were looking at Tennessee for a long time, Eastern Tennessee. But I'm scared of the weather, man. I really am. To be flat honestly, I'm scared that we're gonna move out there, and the first summer is just gonna kill me.
Yeah.
Like the humidity and the heat and this.
Yeah, I'm not too worried about that, but I think it'd be tough for my wife. I don't think she'd dig it.
Yeah.
But yeah, we live in a place where everybody comes to visit.
Yes, to vacation, right? We live where people vacation is what somebody said one time. I was like, yeah.
It's true.
I guess.
From all over the world.
But yeah, we're always trying to get out of here. You know, it's like, well, where can we go to vacation?
Yeah.
Why don't you just go to the beach? Nah, I've done that a million times, you know. But, so. All right, man, 2024. Who do you like? This will be our last political aspect.
So for a while I was thinking, I don't even know if I would vote for Trump in a general, which is probably hyperbole. I think I would. I really am just so annoyed with Trump right now. I didn't like him in the first place. I thought it was insane that he won the primary to begin with, but I voted for him reluctantly. I think he did a pretty good job in general, but he's just...
Did you vote for him because he wasn't Hillary?
Yeah.
Pretty much?
Yeah.
Just because she was such a horrible...
Oh, yeah. She's, again, kind of poster child corrupt politician.
So if somebody else that was in the primaries, like Bernie Sanders or something like that, would have got in the Democratic seat...
No, Bernie's... No.
You still would have voted for Trump? Okay.
Bernie's...
Are there any of the Democratic potentials? No?
No, they're all the same.
They're all... Okay.
Yeah.
So it could have been anybody in there, and you still would have voted for Trump?
Probably, yeah. Yeah.
But that was the first time.
But that was the first time, and he was better than I thought he would be. I think he did a lot of good things, but just who he is, he's kind of a mess.
Yeah.
And I think he's dangerous in that sense that you never know what he's going to do. He's kind of he's a little bit crazy, and he really went off the deep end after the election. And like
after which election?
2020.
Oh, the one he lost.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it just that was just crazy. He was just out of control.
Yeah.
So I lost all kind of any respect I might have had for him as a
I think a lot of people did. Yeah. So if it's Trump Biden, but if it's Trump Biden, are you going Biden?
No.
Okay.
No.
But you hope someone else is in the Republican seat other than Trump.
I hope so, but I doubt it.
You think he's going to get it?
Probably.
Okay.
And then, and I think he does do damage to the whole conservative movement because all his craziness and silliness then gets, the media obviously uses every little bit of that to paint the conservatives as...
They assume we're all just like that.
Yeah.
Right.
And, dude, I go to my mom's house every other day or so and hang out for a little bit. And a lot of times I'll be there when the news is on because she still watches like NBC or whatever. Mm-hmm. And it's just insane, dude. It's every story, just propaganda, just down the line. Like whatever the White House is saying that day, they're saying, period. It's insane, dude. I'm just like...
You think we got past all this by now, but...
But I mean, I know I'm not saying it was never like that, but when I was a kid, and even growing up as a young adult, you could turn on the news and you'd see like more or less the stories, and there was bias and all that, but now it's not bias anymore. It's just propaganda. It's
right.
Insane. So
yeah.
So my hope for the future is grim, and that's probably the main reason. Honestly, like the media is so corrupt.
Right.
The college, the school system, the media, Hollywood. All of the 3-letter agencies, they're all corrupt.
Yeah.
And they're all in the same system, they're all in the same game, same team.
Yeah.
How are you going to beat that?
Don't you think, though, that something that's beneficial, at least recently, is that there doesn't seem to be as much beating around the bush anymore? Like, all those places that are corrupt, they're at least saying where they stand now. And even things like Fox News, which was always seen as the conservative news outlet, right?
Yeah. Which
a lot of us that are pretty, steeped in conservative, we look at Fox News and say, yes, it's better than CNN, but I still would never say that Fox News was conservative, like to its core.
It's
but now it's conservative-ish.
Yeah.
It's more conservative than CNN. right?
Yeah, by leaps and bounds.
But now you're starting to see a lot of the things that you wouldn't have seen a few years ago. Like they're doing things and saying things that they wouldn't have said. Do you know what I'm saying? Like like Tucker Carlson getting let go from there, and he's kind of saying some things about that were happening behind the scenes. But now you're actually seeing some of this stuff to where even like CNN, who's always been a left wing kind of thing, but even you're seeing some of the stuff happening within CNN. It's like, okay, now they call it saying the quiet part out loud, right? The stuff that they used to keep on the hush hush. Now they're like, all right, we don't care anymore. We're just going to tell people really what we're doing and what we're about.
But see, to me, that's a scary thing. When the people like that know they don't have to hide anymore, how do they know that? They know that they can't be beat. And I think that's what really has happened with the Biden administration.
So it's a cockiness.
I think they came out and said, we're going to just go whole hog because we know you can't beat us. Like, even if... I just think they have so much confidence that they're going to do whatever they'll say whatever, do whatever, because they don't think they can be beat.
Right.
No matter what they do.
So it's an overconfidence. But see, they are being beat in ways that they haven't been before. Like there's a lot of things happening.
But what about 2022? I mean, if you look at all that was going on, that should have been a red wave. It should have been. Like, if you just look at all the indicators, how insane things have been, how far left Biden was, and it wasn't. We barely squeaked out 4 congressional seats. So it's like, really? Like, I don't know.
I guess I'm talking more like in the terms of like the public. Because before, there seems to be a lot like of things happening with agendas and things being pushed that were being allowed for a long time. And now there seems to be a lot of public backlash to a lot of things. And there's people that are standing up and saying, no, we're not going to support your business. And I mean, there's always been boycotts. There's always been stuff. But now it seems to be at a level where it's actually harming the company to where the hope is that they're going to start realizing, okay, maybe there's not a big of an audience for this that we thought,
Maybe, but do they care? So, for example, if Anheuser-Busch loses a ton of money in Bud Light, will BlackRock and Vanguard just come in and say, hey, don't worry about it. We got your back. We'll make sure all our people invest in you anyway.
Right.
In your other businesses.
Right.
But if you don't do what you did and you don't go trans, then we'll make sure, even though everybody loves you, that we don't invest in you and you lose money, way more money.
Right.
So I'm just saying, I think the system's rigged, or it doesn't matter. They don't care if you buy their stuff.
Right. But I mean, that's what I'm saying. So if we can get back to a point, and maybe this is a pipe dream, but if we can get back to a point where people just buy the product that they want to buy, they consume what they want to consume, and that's it. Right? If we can get to a point where CEOs and businesses and corporations just stay out of the politics game completely and say, look, we're Anheuser-Busch, we make beer.
But that's like saying,
if you like the taste of our beer, buy our beer. If not, buy someone else's beer.
But it won't, because it is a religion. And I think everybody's religious even if they don't know it. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, even people who say, I'm just a materialist, atheist. If you look hard enough, you'll usually find some kind of a religious mantra that they follow, whether it be the environment, the sexual revolution stuff. And I think that's what's going on. Even if business CEOs are very greedy and care about money, I believe all of them also are religious in a sense, and they think that they need to do good, and their doing good means serve Mother Earth or the sexual whatever it is.
Yeah, but what if by serving those things... See, I always look at it like I try to put myself in their shoes. If I'm a CEO of a company or whatever, and let's say I've been either middle of the road or just haven't stated my political opinions on anything, right? To me, it's suicide to take either side of any of these issues. Like if I come out against the trans community, suicide. If I come out for the trans community, suicide. Because all you're doing is now you're taking your middle of the road and you're splitting your audience in half.
Yeah, but why do they do it then?
See, I think, and this is my thought, unless there's, like you're saying, there's more going on behind the scenes that I don't know about, but just on the surface, I think they're doing it because they, in their mind, when they start this, they think it's going to put them over the top. Like they're thinking, oh, there's a huge market for this.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like Disney and putting gay characters in their films. Oh, there's a huge market for this. But then they put out one movie, flop. Next movie, flop. Next movie, flop. Now, as a CEO of Disney, you got to start realizing, okay, our movies up to this point, we're doing okay.
Yeah.
And then from here on, they've been a flop. What's the common denominator here? Oh, there's a gay character in every single one. There's a trans agenda. There's some kind of agenda here. There's this.
Yeah.
Or, I could even say this hasn't happened, but let's say it was like profanity. Let's say you started with Disney movies to start putting F-bombs.
Yeah.
And you say, okay, well, our movies were doing great up until this movie where we put our first F-bomb and then we put 2 more in this movie and then and our sales have just been plummeting. Yeah. As a CEO, I'm going to be like, you know what? Let's pull the F-bombs out of the kids' movies because it's not selling well.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, I'm sure that will and does happen. I think there's another aspect, though, too. I think if you're a CEO, you're a multimillionaire / billionaire, you are probably a dirtbag. Because a lot of them
thank you.
Like real dirtbags.
You looked right at me as you said that, man. That was kind of...
like pedophile island kind of dudes, right?
Yeah.
Well, they have a very guilty conscience. And they think, well, how do I assuage that guilty conscience? I'll save the environment. I'll protect trans people. I'll blah, blah, blah. And of course, they're not going to say, I'll do something really good because they're dirtbags.
Right.
So I think there's a lot of that going on. I think that a lot of their leftist stuff is their version of trying to do something good that'll win them some kind of moral points because they know they're evil and they're dirtbags. So it's, I raped that, teenager at that party, but at least I, saved,
right,
the environment by doing X.
It's like that scale thing. Like if you're good, at least doubles or comes to the same level as the bad, or outdoes the bad, then you're doing okay.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of that going on, especially with the upper levels, the real wealthy.
I don't know. I guess it's just hard for me to buy that as a CEO. I feel like a CEO is more. They're more interested in the profit, right? The bottom line. That okay, what's going to make money? What's not going to make money?
Sometimes I think you get to a certain point where sure, you always want to make money, but I think all these guys know they will anyway.
Right.
And second of all, they're they've made all the money they can make, and they're more interested in.
Well, and then they start relying on celebrity influence, right? Like you recently, back to the Bud Light thing, Charles Barkley. Did you hear about this recently?
Sure, yeah.
He came out and said, if you don't drink Bud Light, you're a this and you're a that. It's like, why anybody really cares what Charles Barkley thinks? I don't know.
Well, okay. That's a good point, though. Is that not why we are partly where we are? Is because we as a people listen to people like that.
Right.
We might not say we do, but a lot of people do.
Right.
That's who we are as a culture. We listen to stupid people.
Well, because of their celebrity status, to where it used to be you listen to somebody who's shown wisdom in the past or who's shown prominence in something like that. But it's like, oh, he's a famous basketball player. Oh, Kim Kardashian said to do this. Oh, she's famous for what is she famous for again? I forgot. But hey, sex tape, and she's on the news and whatever. She's a big person. Let's listen to what she has to say. And nobody ever thinks to themselves, well, maybe I'm going to check out what she has to say. Because just because somebody says something doesn't mean it's true.
A basketball player who probably slept with thousands of women, has who knows how many kids that he's not supporting all over the country.
Right.
And yet he's going to moralize to us.
Yes. How dare you?
And we're going to say, oh, Charles said.
Hey, that's Sir Charles to you, buddy.
But that's who we are.
I know.
That's who we listen to.
But I'm just hopeless. Not hopeless. Hopeful. I'm hopelessly hopeful. In the sense that I just see change happening there. I see there seems to be. We're getting to a turning point where it seems like less and less people are going that route where they're going to be like, oh, this guy says this, great. I'm just going to take his word for it and go.
Maybe. I hope so. Yeah. But we went and saw The Sound of Freedom, the child trafficking thing.
Yeah.
And I mean, it was very difficult to watch. Yeah. I think it's great that they put it out there. I hope it makes a difference. I believe it will. However, even after I watched it, I was thinking, well, I want to give, I want to help. But I'm thinking, to some degree, you're fighting against this. You're kicking against the goads, right? And in that, there's always going to be another guy to come take that guy's place.
Right.
And the only way to truly stop something like that is to transform people's lives.
Right.
By the gospel. And until these people are changed and transformed, they are going to keep doing evil things.
Right. That doesn't mean we shouldn't try to stop
No,
it. Like if you knew
absolutely
your
not.
neighbor was sex trafficking little kids, you'd
That's what I said. I'm glad they made the movie. It was great.
You'd bust through the door with a bazooka and blow his face off, right? Like Rambo.
Exactly.
All right, so we'll end there on the political stuff and we'll get into spirituality. But since you mentioned that movie, I'm going to go on my unpopular opinion rant real quick. So I haven't seen the movie.
Okay.
I wanted to see the movie. I still want to see the movie. I'm still going to see the movie. But I'm struggling because, so Angel Studios put it out.
Okay.
Right, which is the same company that put out The Chosen. They started as VidAngel.
Okay.
Okay, do you know what VidAngel is?
No.
So it's a streaming company that you can edit movies and TV shows, right? So I can watch to clean them up. So I can watch a TV show or a movie on VidAngel, and I can choose. I want to take out these words. I want to take out these sex scenes. I want to take out this violent part. Whatever it is, right? Cool. Okay, it's great. It's awesome. I love it. Changed our lives as a family, Christian family, trying to watch good movies without all the crap in there. It's been great. Love VidAngel. Then it became Angel Studios. They put out The Chosen. I'm a fan of The Chosen. I know I have my own beef with parts of The Chosen, but as a whole, I like The Chosen. I'll say that for the whole world to hear. Maybe that's a bad thing to say. So here's this Christian company, Angel Studios, right? They started as, and they still do, a streaming service where they edit movies because obviously they're like, well, we don't want that stuff in movies, okay?
Okay.
So then they buy the rights to this movie, which is a great story, awesome, all about sex trafficking and this one man story who he went in there and do all these amazing things, fantastic. Movie's got profanity in it.
Oh, okay.
And that surprised me, and I was like, okay, this is a Christian studio who's putting out a TV show about the life of Jesus, right? And the life of the early church. And they're going to put out a movie. Now, the only defense I can see is they didn't, from what I understand, they didn't write or make the movie, right? The movie has been done for like 4 or 5 years. Yeah. It's been shopped around to all these different places. One place would pick it up, like Netflix picked it up, then they dropped it. And then someone else picked it up and they dropped it. And this kept happening. Well, then Angel Studios is like, we'll put it out.
Yeah.
So I guess there's some grace there in a sense, but at the same time, I'm like, if it was me, and this is really just based on my belief that profanity doesn't add really to a movie.
Sure.
So if it was me, I would have took the movie and I would have said, I told my editing team, okay, I want you to go in and just take out these couple words. First of all, because they add nothing to the story. It's totally irrelevant if you take it out. It's not prominent. Who cares?
Yeah.
And because we're a Christian company, just take that out.
Yeah.
And I understand it's not a kid's movie. Like, even without the profanity, I wouldn't let my kids see it because it's very...
When we went to see the movie, there had to be like 10 kids in there under the age of 10.
Wow.
I was blown away. I was like, what are you doing?
Yeah, see, that's too young, I think, to be exposing them to...
It's like terrorizing.
Yes, right. A movie that needs to be seen and known by adults, for sure. Like, there's the shock value there because that's really happening, right? I get it. But to expose a young kid to that, I was like, I don't know.
Horrible. Yeah.
But anyway, that's my whole beef with it. That's why we haven't seen it yet. We're waiting for it to come out on VidAngel so we can filter it.
I mean, it's a cool story. I mean, it's the dude's amazing. Like the guy who did that.
Oh yeah.
It's insane.
Yeah, and I've heard him tell his story before. He's been on a couple different podcasts that I've listened to.
It's a very cool story.
And I love Jim Caviezel, great actor. I like him as a person. He seems like a real stand-up guy. Someone that one of the few people in Hollywood that I would say I really like that guy. I think I could hang out with that guy on the weekend.
But what's insane? I had two things. This is crazy. How much the media tried to bash that movie.
Oh, still.
That blows me away.
They still are. In fact, we're part of a neighborhood group online where you can type what's going on in the neighborhood, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
somebody said, "Oh, I think everybody should go see this movie. It's a great movie about sex trafficking, blah blah." And of course, I saw that and I was like, "Oh, I got to read the comments."
Yeah.
So I'm going down the comments and everybody's like, "Oh, we loved it. And I'm looking. Oh, there it is. There's the guy I was looking for. This is just a bunch of propaganda about blah 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 blah. And then he posts something that's like, "Oh, check out this article and something." It's like, dude, shut up. Yeah. And that's the whole thing. That political? I don't know.
Like not sex trafficking children.
Right. Well, that's the whole point.
Like what Democrats don't agree with. Yes. They're for that. And that's what I think. And that's where you kind of go, well, I don't know, but they are.
Well, and that's the whole thing, right? And that's why you got people like Ben Shapiro and Matt, some of the Daily Wire guys, Matt Walsh, some of these people, Candace Owens is like, why is there outcry about this? Like,
it's insane.
What could possibly be wrong with this? Like, you think it's a conspiracy? You think like sex trafficking isn't really happening? People, the conservative people in the world are making up this idea of sex trafficking. To what gain? So they can make a movie with Jim Caviezel and somehow cash out? No places would pick it up.
They're trying to hide something.
You think?
Mm-hmm.
You think? But so we'll go into spiritual stuff.
Okay.
And then just I guess give us a brief description of how you became a Christian. Like just you grew up in I know you grew up in the church somewhat, right? And then you kind of
So that's much more complicated. No, just kidding.
I need 3 hours to tell my story.
Okay, I would say I grew up in a Christian home. Went to church every Sunday. What
about Wednesday nights?
No.
Oh, see.
Although I do remember, I remember the night. It was actually I think a Sunday night service where it was very gospel presentation centered. I remember there's an altar call kind of a thing, and I was probably 7, 8 years old, something somewhere around there. And I remember praying the prayer, right? Mm-hmm. And then I got baptized soon after.
Water.
8 years old. Yeah, water baptized. Okay. So that's pretty much it. And then, I went through my rebellious period as a teenager, but I still would have told you I was a Christian and just thought that partying wasn't bad. I wasn't hurting anybody. I was just having a good time.
But looking back now, do you think you were a Christian at that time?
I do. I think I was ignorant in a lot of ways. I think I was ignorant.
So then what brought you, when you kind of went through your rebellious phase, what brought you out of that?
Well, I mean, I think first of all, the realization that me trying to please myself was not really working. I was actually kind of miserable.
Funny how that works like that.
Yeah. And then I also had a great youth pastor who just was a great guy, cared, and he actually did a sermon on hell.
Okay.
It was just, I remember it was very vivid and very, he wasn't trying to scare people, but it was good. It was like a wake-up call. And I had a good friend, my best friend at the time, who was just like, hey dude, the way you're living, I'm a little worried. I don't know if you're actually going to go to heaven.
As a Christian friend
that
you had who knew you were a professing Christian, but he had the stones to tell me, dude, hey, I know you profess Christ, but you might not be the real deal.
And part of the reason why I do think I was saved at the time was because I didn't just go, whatever, I don't care. It hit me hard, and I was and I wasn't mad.
Right.
I was dude, man, I think he's right. And so I had to really go home and I did actually pray in the midst of my mess. And
what was that prayer like? Do you remember? Was it?
Well, it was pretty simple. It was, God help me. I know I'm sinning now, and I realize that, but I'm stuck. I'm addicted to my sins. Help me overcome these addictions.
Right.
I don't feel like I can.
Right.
And he did.
Right. And those addictions were heroin and orgies, right?
No. Thankfully, going to church put enough fear of God into me.
Gotcha.
It was not that bad, but no, it was marijuana. To some degree, alcohol. The alcohol never really got me. It was just the pot.
Yeah.
Pornography. One thing, growing up in a Baptist church, I was terrified of committing the sin of premarital sex. So I did not do that. They instilled that fear in me pretty well. So
I think you're one of the only people I know that can say that.
Yeah.
That you were a virgin on your wedding day.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
By God's grace. And,
yeah.
And I was never a real like a player,
Yeah. Which is hard to believe. I mean,
I didn't have game, but
yeah, you do today.
It's a good thing. Oh yeah,
you do today. Yeah, that's
Yeah. Yeah. So I prayed that prayer, and God really did answer it in some kind of powerful ways. And
yeah. Okay. Cool.
And then it was a slow road back to actually walking like a Christian.
Right.
Took a few years.
Yeah, there's a whole lot there to we could talk about, of course, but because I'm always interested in that kind of thing, like the once saved, always saved, or the actually saved and then the backsliding for a while and out of it. It's like
I've struggled with that over the years.
Yeah, and whenever somebody tells me, "Oh, I got saved when I was 5 years old," or I would never sit there and say, "No, you didn't. There's no way that's possible. It's not going to happen." But I am a little leery, right? And I always ask people to tell me that. I said, "Well, was there a point in your either young adult or later adult life where you kind of had an awakening to where you're like, I'm not sure that was the real deal. Like, did I really mean when I prayed when I was 5 and I raised my hand and the Sunday school lady, did the prayer with me? Did that actually happen? Or as far as like, was I really saved that day? You know what I mean? Like, and for most people, there's always that. There's always, I was saved when I was 5. And then when I was 12 or 13, I started to doubt or, because there's always, I guess my point is there's that point of growing up where you realize I need to have this faith that's real to me.
Well, and that's why I say I was ignorant. And I think that does matter because if you're ignorant, you're not going to know how to live and how to overcome the things that God calls you to overcome.
Right.
And one of the biggest issues was I ended up as an adult getting rebaptized.
Oh, okay. I ended up as an adult also.
Isn't that cool?
Yeah.
So I started questioning, just like you said, like, maybe I wasn't saved. And so I ended up getting rebaptized because I go, well, now I'm really saved. And then looking back, I'm like, that was really stupid. I really, really wish I hadn't have done that. Because first of all, it's a bad understanding of baptism.
Right.
But also, I just don't think that was even.
Why
true.
did you think you needed that or something? Was like
I just thought I got things backwards. Like I wasn't really saved
when you got baptized originally.
I need to do it. Yeah. Okay. So now I need to do it as a real believer, which is why it's so tricky to do believer baptism because when did you become a believer, and then how do you know if things changed? Were you not?
Right. Well, and that's why I would. This last Sunday they did the whole baptism thing which was cool. It was awesome. And there was a little mini sermon beforehand. And one of the things he had said was, he says, I'm probably not going to quote him directly. So if you listen to this, I'm not quoting you directly. But something along the lines of a lot of people get their kids baptized when they're 7, 8, 9, whatever years old. And he says, and that's fine. I'm not saying that I won't do it or there's nothing wrong with that. But it's almost, to me, it's almost the same as like when your kid tells you when they're 9 years old and they tell you, I want to pray and ask Jesus into my heart. Now, as a dad, you're never going to go, you're not old enough for that. Don't be stupid. Don't be ridiculous. Of course not. You're going to lead them in a prayer. You're going to talk to them about what salvation is. You're going to preach the gospel, whatever, right? You're going to make sure they're understanding what they're doing. Then you're going to pray with them. Yeah. But for me, deep down, I'm going to be thinking to myself, we'll see. I would never say that to them, but I'm thinking it, right? Because it's going to happen. They're going to get to a point where the rubber's going to meet the road, right? And it's going to be, is this real? Is this real to me? Am I just doing this because my parents are Christians, or I go to church, or I've seen my friends getting baptized? There's all these other factors that can go into play to where, when they're older, I think they're more likely to make that mature, informed decision. So my stance is, I don't think somebody should get water baptized until they're really ready for that, because we've talked before. My stance on water baptism is this is an outward expression of what's already happened to you inwardly. This is your way of telling the world, I've turned from my old ways. I'm now following Christ. I'm born again. So I'm going to go through this symbolism of being dunked under the water. I'm coming up, newness of life. That doesn't mean that you're getting saved, right? As most Christians would agree with that. It's a symbol of the fact that you already are saved, right? Because you get saved, and the world and your family members aren't going to be able to know that necessarily, other than you telling them, and they'll probably see some lifestyle changes, I would imagine, over time. But this ceremony of outwardly showing, look, I want everybody to know I'm different, right? Yeah. And I think that's beautiful. I think that's a beautiful thing to do. But I don't know if a 7 or 8 year old is really in a place to make that declaration. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? So.
Of course, yeah. And so I went through all that too, the same exact thinking. The problem I have with that is, as my kids grew up, I felt oftentimes like I was preventing them from really obeying the Lord. So in my opinion, we're called to baptism as an act of obedience. And so if my child comes to me and says, oh, I want to get baptized, I'm like, I don't know, I'm almost kind of pushing them away from that obedience and that important step in their Christian faith. And I also think, okay, then now who is my 7-year-old child? Are they a Christian? Are they not a Christian? Do I accept that they're a Christian? Do I let them take communion?
Well, see, that's another good one. Yes.
And then if they die, are they not saved? Are they saved?
How can you know?
Well, but see, that's an important thing, even for a 6-7-year-old. They want to know.
Well, of course they do.
And so what do I tell them?
Well,
we'll see when you're 15, maybe.
Well, no.
Well, then.
That's why I said I would never say that to my kid.
I know, but still, I just felt like I need to know. So, like, who is this child? Right. Yeah, but are they part of the church? Are they a believer in Christ? Are they part of the kingdom of God? Are they not? Right. And to me, and I know this is anathema to a lot of Christians nowadays, but baptism is the visual entrance into the church in the kingdom of God.
Right, but let's go back. So you're saying you have your 7 or 8 year old who goes to church with you, has said that they love Jesus and the whole deal, and you're as dad, you're thinking to yourself, how do I know if they're truly of the kingdom, they're truly saved or whatever? And my response is, you really can't know. Not that you should tell them that, but what you're saying is, by having them go through this ritual of baptism, now you know that? Like, does that convey some kind of seal?
I would say nobody knows, including all of us, except for God.
Right, but how does water baptism... But
I don't know about myself. I hope I'm safe.
Sure, but my point I'm making here is with water baptism. How does water baptism make that any more of a reality to you?
It makes it a visual, tangible reality that we can all attest to. God only knows who's truly saved, because only God knows our hearts.
But God only knew that before the water baptism also. So what's the difference?
So now it's a matter of... First of all, again, it's a matter of obedience to Christ, and it's a matter of entrance into the visible church, and it's so that we all understand who is the church, who's in the church, who's a part of the kingdom of God. And in my opinion, the scriptures don't speak of non-baptized Christians. Everybody, as far as the scriptures are concerned, who is a believer in Christ is baptized. It doesn't mean it saves them, yes, but they're referred. You don't really have one without the other. It doesn't mean it doesn't exist. Of course, somebody can believe and not be baptized for whatever reason and still be saved.
Well, but there's plenty of instances in the scripture where we're either not told. So you're saying in the instances where we're not told, it's assumed. So it's assumed that the Apostle Paul was baptized.
Absolutely. No, I think it's actually in Acts. He was baptized.
It says that he was baptized.
Aeneas.
Okay.
So my point is to say, I think it's important that we all understand who is and who isn't, and that my child understands. That even my 6-year-old can say, hey, I'm a Christian, I got baptized, I accepted Christ and went.
But there is such a danger there. Because here's why. Because to me, that's the same as like the sinner's prayer. There's no difference
Except
there.
it's biblical.
Well, but it's because the word's in there, right? The word baptism is in there, right? But you just said a minute ago,
it is.
It's showing obedience to Christ.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
But that's for a person who's truly saved.
Yes.
Right. So if you're not truly saved,
and how do you know that?
Well, you
how
don't.
Would you ever know?
So why do you err on the side of baptism then, as opposed to not?
Well,
like, what's the difference?
So, because to me, when I read the scriptures, it's clear as soon as somebody hears the gospel and receives it, as far as we can ever know that they received it,
sure,
they get baptized, and that's their entrance into the community. And so, to prevent that for any reason, to me, is very sketchy.
Okay.
And also, like, think of James. Faith without works is dead. Well, if I say I believe and yet am not baptized, when I understand that that's a command, then...
Whoa.
Then why...
Wow. That's a big stretch, my friend. Big stretch there. You're like Plastic Man over there with your stretching.
It's a dangerous place.
Well, back to what I'm saying is dangerous, though, is that... So you have Catholicism, which does infant baptism, okay? Which I know you don't agree with necessarily.
Well, hold on.
Okay.
Catholicism, Presbyterianism.
Okay. Lutheran.
Anglicanism.
Yeah.
Lutheranism.
Sure.
Basically, everybody did infant baptism until the Baptists, what we're called the Anabaptists.
Okay.
I'm sure I'm not going to be totally right on this, but somewhere around the 1800s, that became a real thing. Before that, it was always just a fringe movement that was considered heresy.
Okay.
So, go ahead.
Okay. Hang on, Ryan. Hang on a sec before you continue. Let me tear down your whole belief system. Go ahead, buddy.
Yeah.
No, so I mean, but the thing with that is, so let's say you grow up Catholic,
okay,
and you are water baptized when you're an infant, okay, and you grow up and you're 20, and you're not really. So let's say you still go to mass, you still do all the rituals, you still do the whole thing, and so let's say somebody like your friend who came to you one day and said, Mark, I know that you grew up and you believe and you're going to church and all this, but I'm worried about you.
Yeah.
So same guy. So the guy's Catholic friend comes up to him and says, Hey, Jim, I'm really concerned.
Yeah.
I don't know why his name's Jim. It just sounded right. Hey, Jim, something's up here. I'm not sure that you're truly saved.
Yeah.
And Jim says, well, but I was water baptized when I was an infant.
Yeah.
So get out of my face. Right? So, I mean, the same thing. I mean, I know that's far back because now we're talking about infant baptism, but I think the same thing can be said for Christians that hold to that as, and I'm not saying it's not important, but to hold it on such a high level as saying that's the proof.
There's a little bit of a flaw in your example.
There's no flaws here, dude. Come on.
Using a Catholic is taking it a whole nother step because
right. Well, that's why I went back.
Catholics actually teach that baptism is salvific.
Right.
It's a saving ordinance.
Right.
Well,
then explain to me what you're saying baptism is then.
A Protestant wouldn't say that.
What would you say?
I think baptism is the visible expression of an invisible faith.
That's the same thing I said.
But it's also the visible entrance into the body of Christ, to the church, to the people of God.
Okay.
It is.
You don't think it's more than visible? That's what I'm getting at.
That's a good question.
Well, because the way you're talking, you sound like it's more than that, but when you say the words, you're not saying it. Because everything you just said, I agree with. Yes, it's a visible showing of what you believe, expression. It's a visible even showing of you entering into God's church. Of course, yes.
Do I think there's something supernatural happening in baptism? I think if the baptism is done in faith, then I don't know.
I guess I'm going back to what you said a minute ago about your own children and about how you may have doubts about their salvation, even though they profess to believe in Christ. They profess that they believe the right things and say they have the right theology, the right doctrine, whatever. Yet you have doubts. So now by getting them water baptized, now you don't have as many doubts. That's what I'm coming back to, because that sounds like you think something more solidifying is happening.
I don't think it's that. But I do think as humans we're embodied creatures. we live in a physical reality, and I do think there's a sense in which not only does that physical reality help us grasp deeper realities, spiritual realities, it also helps us cement those things in our minds, in our hearts. So things like baptism, the sacraments of baptism and communion are very helpful to us because they physically kind of cement those spiritual realities in our experience, in our embodied experience. I would also say there's something spiritual going on there. They're not just physical things.
Well, explain that then.
Because you're acting in faith before God and doing something that He's sanctified in a sense, right? Mm-hmm. So Christ has said to partake in communion. He do this in remembrance of me. Mm-hmm. The disciples continue that. And in Corinthians, when Paul says, hey, you guys are taking this communion, which is a physical act of just drinking wine and eating bread, and you're becoming ill and dying because you're doing it in an unworthy manner. Hmm. To me, there's something more than just the physical going on there, or else there wouldn't be this consequence.
Well, I would agree. I think what's going on there is people that were unsaved.
But that's not what it says. It doesn't say that you're unsaved. It says you're taking it, you Christians are taking this in an unworthy manner.
Right, but it's Christians. Right?
But he doesn't differentiate that.
Well, no, but that's like going into sections where he's talking about salvation and what it means. You're like, well, why is he saying this to the church? This letter's to the church. It's like, yes, because he knows that not everybody in the church is really the church.
No, but
it's just like today, you walk into any congregation, you know that there's people in there that aren't really saved.
But Christians can do things in an unworthy way. There's no reason to think that non-Christians.
Well, I agree. I agree with that statement. But I mean, if we're talking about communion,
yes,
right, and this goes back to what we're talking about with kids. Like Mike, Addie just recently started being allowed to take communion, and it's because Bethany and I have always felt that our kids need to. I'm not saying we have to prove their salvation or we have to somehow know for sure they're saved, but they have to at least understand what they're doing with communion. They have to understand that they can't be wanting a snack, right? Which to me is what was happening in Corinthians. Is it Corinthians you're just quoting?
Yeah.
Where they're talking about that. They were coming and treating it like a meal, right? Oh, it's good. It's communion. Let's eat. You know, it's like, well, no, this is we're symbolically receiving the body and blood of Christ to in remembrance of what He did for us, right? There's a ceremony there. It's symbolic.
But I'm just saying the yes, it's symbolic. But I'm just saying that the consequences of doing it in an unworthy manner were very severe. There was something happening to them. God was judging them because this was a sacred thing. Mm-hmm. This was they were treating the body and blood of Christ as a common thing, right? Sure. And
or they weren't taking it seriously.
Yeah, it's a sacred thing that they were defaming, and they were being judged for it. Okay. By God. So to me, there's something more than just the physical act going on. It's not just we're drinking wine and eating bread, and it's just it's just a symbolic thing we do.
But it's really different. I think it's different to say that there's something spiritual going on, like that's happening to the person, or part B would be to say there's something we're remembering something spiritual, where it's sacred. This is a sacred thing that we're taking part in. It's not to be taken lightly. It's not to be taken like nonchalantly, right? And I would agree with that. But if you're more saying that something spiritual is happening to the person when they take the communion elements, then that's different.
Baptized.
Or when they get baptized, right?
And I would, even if I were to say that, which I'm not sure about, I have to look more into that, but I don't discount that because I don't know all that's happening spiritually in the spiritual realm, and I don't think God reveals all that to us. Mm-hmm. But I would say it all depends on faith, right? So, for example, if somebody gets baptized not in faith, then I'd say no. Then there is no real significance there.
What do you mean by not in faith? What do you mean by that?
Not believing in Christ.
So, like an unbeliever.
Just doing it because for whatever reason.
So, an unsaved person, you mean?
Yes.
Okay.
What's really interesting, though, so I don't know if I'm an infant Baptist or a Paedo Baptist. but I do understand it. I probably lean that way. But when I read an article, a paper written by Dietrich Bonhoeffer about infant baptism, was really interesting. And one point he makes is that just like the people who would bring a friend to Jesus for healing, and he'd say, "Your faith has made you well," or Jesus picks the guy up and says, "Your faith has made you," or Peter, when he heals the guy at the gate, he just says, "Hey, what I have, I'll give to you. Stand up and walk." And the guy gets up and walks. He says, "Faith in Christ has made you well." Well, I think in a lot of those cases, you could say it wasn't the faith of the person.
I agree.
They just heard and stood up. It was the faith of the person who was doing it, the healing.
Or it was the faith of God that was given to that guy.
So why couldn't it also be the faith of the parents and the church when they baptize an infant that is accounted to that infant so that baptism is legitimate? Doesn't mean they're saved at that moment, but it does mean that baptism could still be considered to have been done in faith.
Well, but the problem there, and again, is a difference, I think, between you and I with understanding of faith, which we've talked about this a million times. We've always talked about this because it's crucial. It's crucial to a lot of doctrines within Scripture. So, I mean, yes, we have accounts where the paralytic guy was brought in by his friends, right? Yeah. And Jesus says, your faith is healed, or whatever, right? Talking to the men. And sure, but then we read about faith and that people don't produce faith, which I think you would agree with, right? But we'd say that, but then you make a statement like what you just said, and that makes it sound like the person does produce faith. Like, because you're saying, why can't the faith of the parents, right? But I mean, what does that mean?
The faith that God gave the parents.
Right,
the faith that they have
but gave them to exercise?
Yes.
Okay, so...
And the church together as a whole.
But where is that in Scripture, where it says that we're to exercise faith, or we're to use faith in that way, or that God gives us faith, and now it's like this
act in faith that God has given us?
Well, that's different.
That's how I would say
that's more following the persuasion of God. So, so in order for your theory, or not your theory, whatever your little story you just told about the parents and the baptism, then that would have to mean that God persuaded them personally to have their kids baptized. Yes. Okay,
yeah, absolutely,
sure.
Yeah. Right. And the church was persuaded by God to accept that baptism as legitimate and good.
Sure, but then there's a lot of possibilities there. Because how do you take something like that and make it a doctrine for the whole church?
Yeah.
Because if I'm persuaded to go to the mall today and the Lord uses me to minister to somebody, that doesn't mean I can come home and write a book about how everybody needs to go to the mall on Thursday at 2 p.m. and minister because you're going to save souls for the Lord, right? It's not a doctrine. It's the Lord ministering to me and using me personally, persuading me through faith to do something.
Well, you're being persuaded by God through His Word.
Well, right, but I mean...
Now, I'm not going to say that the Word is explicit about infant baptism. It's not. I would just say, but it would be a faith. Like, I believe that the Word of God is clear enough that I should baptize this infant.
But see, I don't think that's biblical faith, because you're believing something that's not explicit. So that's more like I'm believing God for it, right? Another one of my favorite phrases. People, I'm just believing God for it. What does that even mean? To where faith is more like biblical faith means God has put a stepping stone in front of you, and you step on that stepping stone.
But then you'd have to tell me, when is baptism explicit?
When is it explicit? Well, see, this is where we differ, right? Because you're right. So this is where you and I would differ as far as our thoughts on what we see in the Bible as baptism, right? Water baptism, right? I think that, yes, do we see people saying repent and be baptized, right? John the Baptist said it. Jesus said it, right? Paul said it.
Yeah. Peter.
They said it in the epistles.
In Acts.
Oh, in Acts, okay. But we don't really see it in the epistles, which is interesting, right? It's only in the historical narratives like the Gospels and Acts.
Yeah.
So by the same token, you could say where Jesus sent the disciples out to heal and to do all the things He sent them out for, that also applies to us today, and say that Jesus told us to do that. So that's my only problem with that. I think there was a purpose. I think there was a specific purpose for John the Baptist and his baptism of repentance that I believe at the time was for the Jews. Mm-hmm. And then I think that continued on through the early part of the early church, where that's just what they did. You got saved, and then you got water baptized, right? Mm-hmm. And then I think the Christian church of today has adopted that. And again, I think it's great. I think it's a great thing to adopt that and say, look, this is what we're going to do if a person gets saved spiritually, or they profess to have been saved, because again, we can't see their hearts.
But it wouldn't matter if they did or didn't.
I'm not saying it wouldn't matter. I'm saying we can't know that. So in other words, if a guy comes up to me and says, I want to be water baptized. So here's a good example. At the baptism on Sunday, the pastor had asked each person that came up a certain list of questions, which are important, right? Yeah. Do you believe in Jesus Christ? Yes, I do. Do you reject evil and follow the Lord? Yes, I do, right? These are things that you ask. Now, if he was up there and he said, do you believe in Jesus Christ? He says, no. And they said, well, do you believe in God at all? Not even a little bit. Do you reject evil? No, I worship Satan. Do you believe you'd be in heaven today if you died? No way.
Somehow he could just wrestle him under the water.
Well, I'm just right. That's my point. Like if the person answered in that way, there's no way that he would have baptized them, right? Because it's stupid. Yeah. But you ask this question, do you believe in God? Yes. But does the pastor know for sure that's true? No, he doesn't. But at least the guy's professing it. Do you turn your back on evil? Yes. Okay, good to go. These are the things you need to profess with the mouth, even if no one else knows for sure if they're true. So then you baptize the guy. Now, does that mean that somehow some magical formula went into that guy, and now, even if he wasn't saved, now he is, or if he was saved, now he's more so saved, or now he's more sealed? Like, I don't see that in Scripture. I'm just not seeing it. So I mean, I think that's where our main contention is with baptism, as far as what the Bible says.
Okay, so I could say I'm a Paedo-Baptist, right? I believe in infant baptism. There's Credo Baptists who believe in believer's baptism, meaning like you have to profess, you have to be old enough.
Sure.
And you would be like an A Baptist.
like against baptism? Come on.
Okay.
I'm not that bad.
You're at, what's the, there's atheist.
Agnostic?
Agnostic, yeah. So you're agnostic.
No, I wouldn't even say that. I think I have an informed understanding of what I think baptism is. Now, that may differ with your informed understanding of what baptism is. Yeah, but again, these aren't explicit, right? You don't find in the epistles where Paul says, all right, now that you're all saved, go get baptized. Or here's the instructions for the church. You don't, and if that was in there, there would be no discrepancy here at all. Yeah. Then I would agree with you and say, nope, got to do it. Yeah. Guaranteed. It's even if Paul said, yes, you've been saved, but this is the second part. So, you have to be water baptized to be saved. Then I would say, great, let's do it. In Acts,
when they say, what must we do? Peter's preaching the gospel to them.
Yes.
They're cut to the heart. What must we do? Peter says, repent and be baptized for the forgiveness of sin. And you would say, well, that doesn't really count.
Well, boy, man, you are putting some words in my mouth. No, I would say two things with that verse. First of all, I would say the word "for" there needs to be studied. Okay. Because it makes it sound like for the purpose of, right? Yes. So getting water baptized is for the purpose of salvation. That's not what it says. It's the Greek word "eis," which doesn't mean, if it was for the purpose of, it would be either gar or hina, right? Mm-hmm. For the purpose. It's not. It's "eis," which means towards. Yeah. Right?
Yeah.
So,
but he still ties them together. That's the answer.
Well,
repent and be baptized. So baptism is a part of the salvation experience. That's what
sure, but then my next question would be, how are we so certain that he's talking about water there? Because John the Baptist said, a man is coming who will baptize not with water, but with fire and the Holy Spirit, right? And we both believe in the baptism of the Holy Spirit. I believe that's what happens when you get saved.
Yes.
I think it's the one and same event.
Yes.
I know some believe it's two separate events. Now you're saved. Now you need the baptism of the Holy Spirit for the power from on high. No.
Pentecostal.
Yeah, exactly. No, it's like, no, I don't think they're separate instances. I think that is the difference. I think John the Baptist was water baptizing the Jews. That was their outward profession. And this is where it's backwards to me. Not backwards and as in being wrong, but different than what we do now. Then it was the Jews professing, showing an outward thing, saying, I'm going to turn from the old trust in the law and in Judaism for my salvation towards the coming Messiah. Okay? That's where that was what that water baptism of repentance was for. It wasn't, it didn't make them repent. It was an outward expression showing that they're repenting. Well, what are they repenting from?
Their sin.
Okay, but that's no different than what they've been doing. They've been repenting from sin over and over and over and over. So what's the difference between John the Baptist's baptism versus the others? So then I would say that, so then here comes Jesus. And what does John say about Jesus? He says, or even before Jesus shows up, he says, a man is coming who I'm not worthy to tie his shoes.
Yeah.
And he's going to baptize you not with water, right? That's big. Not with water, but with the Holy Spirit and fire.
Yes.
So why wouldn't Jesus come baptizing them with water? If that was what it was all about, if that was such a big part of it. Why would Jesus be baptizing with the Holy Spirit and fire? Well, because that's salvation. That's what really, truly matters.
Of course, yeah, that's inward transformation.
That's, yes.
And the infilling of the Holy Spirit, which actually transforms you. Whereas water baptism was just an outward expression of, I feel sorry for my sin and want to repent of my sin, but you have no power to do it.
More than sorry, I would say, and I'm not going to say that every Jewish person that came to John the Baptist was there for the right reason, right? Because this wasn't the first time they had ever been baptized in a river. Yeah. This was a yearly event that they did. Like they baptized everything. That's the same word used for like them ceremonially washing their hands, washing their dishes. Yeah, like it was all the same as baptizo. Was the
it reminds me of? It reminds me of the it doesn't happen as much anymore, but the whole rededicate yourself.
Yes.
It's like, oh, you feel really bad because you've been sinning. Rededicate yourself to God.
Right.
What's that?
Yeah, and you meet people who've done that 20,000 times,
like once a year.
Yeah, which is no difference than that's the same thing to me as Catholic confession. All right, I spent the weekend getting drunk, doing drugs, and sleeping with 45 people. Now I got to go to confession, and then next week I'm going to do it all over again, and then I'll go to confession, and then it's like, no, that's...
Yeah. So I would just say then, okay, so absolutely, baptism of the Holy Spirit is the salvation experience because it changes you from the inside. However, Jesus then did go on to say, make disciples, baptizing them in the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. That, I think, clearly is water. And the disciples continued that on. They did that, and they passed that on. And I think that's pretty clear. Paul refers to baptism many, many times, Peter too.
Yeah, but I guess there's probably other examples that I can't think off the top of my head of other things that they kind of passed on in the early days of the church. You're also dealing with a lot of Jewish Christians now that have been following Judaism. Now they've been saved. Now they're following Christ.
Yeah, the jailer
that are still
Jewish.
No. I'm just saying. Like the point I'm making is that there was a lot of things that they were still kind of holding on to from old Judaism that even Paul and Peter and some people had to call them out on it and say, "What are you doing? That's not right."
Though. So in Galatians, when Paul's going through this letter to the Galatians about circumcision, he's telling them in extreme terms how bad it is that they think they need to be circumcised as some kind of a work of the law so that they can be more saved or more better Christians or justified before God. But what's weird is Christians nowadays equate us emphasizing baptism to circumcision. And in that they say, just like Paul would say, hey, you don't need the works of the law to be saved. You don't need to be baptized either. And you're like, wait a second. Paul was very well acquainted with baptism and how important it was. He's writing this whole letter about how you don't need to be circumcised and how bad that is. He never once mentions baptism except in a positive sense. He says, you were all baptized into Christ.
Right.
So why wouldn't Paul take that time to say, wait a second, make sure you understand you don't need to be baptized. It's not a work of the law. It's not going to justify you. Be careful. He doesn't do that.
Right.
He doesn't see them as the same. It's not a work of the law in his mind.
But see, and I would agree. I wouldn't say that someone needs to be baptized, water baptized. I know you would. I wouldn't say needs to be, but I would say, say it's important and they should be.
Yeah.
I would say should be, but needs implies that if you don't, you're screwed, right?
Yeah.
You need to eat or you will die, right? It's like, that's a need, right?
No,
you need to eat. You should eat pizza because it tastes better than something else.
Yeah.
You should, but you don't need to eat pizza, but you need to eat something.
Yes.
So it's similar.
Yeah, no, you're right. Need is a I wouldn't use that word, but I obviously don't believe that baptism saves anybody.
Right.
But I also do believe that baptism is an important part.
Yeah, and I would agree.
Essential part.
See, and I agree with most of this. That's the
salvation experience.
Yes.
I think I leave that in God's hands. I wouldn't. God knows who are His, but.
Right.
I wouldn't want to tell anybody like, hey, don't worry about it. If you're not baptized, it doesn't matter. Or it's important, but whatever. Which I think is the attitude of the church today.
And I wouldn't.
Do you hear people talk like that?
But see, I wouldn't talk like that.
We do baptism. We're going to do a baptism in a couple months. It'll be really fun. We'll go to the beach. It's really cool. If you've never been baptized, hey, why not give it a shot? It's kind of neat. Bring your family.
Well, see,
take some pictures. Right? And
I can already tell. But see, I can already tell you. See, I was with you up until that, and the way that's worded does make me roll my eyes. Come on down, give it a shot. It'll be fun. No, that's not. That's like saying that about communion. Hey, try some grape juice and some. It'll be delicious. No.
So why do we do that with baptism? Why isn't it? Hey, anybody who wants to accept Christ today will go baptize you.
Sure.
Boom. We're not waiting 2 months till you invite your family.
No, I'm with you.
But we don't treat it that way. We act like it's just some kind of cool thing we do.
And I would agree. I don't think it's. I don't think in a lot of circles it's treated with as high regard as it should be.
Yes.
But I think in other circles it's treated like more than it should be. More
maybe
it's actual salvation, like it's necessary for like you cannot be saved unless you're water baptized.
But see, most of the time when cults do that, it's because you have to be baptized in their church. Mm-hmm. And that's part of the cult.
Which is, yes. And I know people that have gone to different churches throughout different denominations throughout their life, and they've been baptized 46 times. Every time, because it's like a membership thing. Well, I got to join membership in this church, so I got to start paying my membership dues, and I got to be water baptized by this pastor in this church.
And you might say, "Oh, that's because they take it so seriously." And I would say, "No, it's the opposite. They're belittling it because it's a one-time sanctified, holy experience, and you don't repeat it willy-nilly."
Right.
So,
I know willy-nilly.
That's my hobby horse.
Yeah, hobby horse.
And I'm going to ride it.
Is your hobby horse named willy-nilly?
Yeah, I like that.
All right, so the last thing before we close up, I want to go back to this again, and it's only because I've never heard you say this before, and I'm really curious what you meant. Maybe you said it wrong, and you need to go back on it or whatever. But back to the idea that your kids are professing Christ, and you said, and I agree with you, that as parents, do we know that means they're truly saved? Of course we don't. Do they even know if they're truly saved? Probably not at that age. But then you said by letting them get water baptized, that somehow makes it more clear to you. Or maybe I'm misquoting you, or maybe you want to explain that a little further to me, because that wording does make it sound like something about that water baptism is giving you more assurance of their salvation.
No, I think it's just clarifying to all of us who aren't God and who live in bodies, and it clarifies things.
Okay.
We all see this, we've all experienced it, you've experienced it, so now you can say, because faith can be kind of a ethereal thing in a sense, where I believe. Well, how do you know you believe? Well, did you believe enough? And then baptism and communion help us say, no, you know what? I do believe. I got baptized, and especially at a time where baptism could mean persecution.
Sure.
See, we lose that effect nowadays because that doesn't happen to us.
Well, but that's because it's a public profession of your faith. Like, it's your faith that's getting you persecuted.
Yes.
But you could be a Christian and hide in a hole somewhere and no one would ever know. Yes. But by you standing up there and saying, "Yes, world, I am a Christian," you do that in some of these other countries that hate Christianity, you could die.
Yes.
Sure.
Exactly. So
of course.
We lose a little bit of that now, but still, now we all know and we all understand you've accepted Christ. You've gone through this whole ceremony. You've been baptized. and it's just a solidifying experience for everybody involved.
Okay.
And I think truly people shouldn't take communion until they've been baptized.
Okay.
Maybe. I mean, I think that's kind of a weird thing to say, oh, take communion, accept Christ's body and blood, but you haven't been baptized yet, so we don't really know you. It's just weird to me.
So you're saying it's more of a, like with your kids, it's more of the fact that they're going through this shows you that they're more serious about it. It puts a little more validity to their own seriousness about their profession.
Yeah,
in Christ.
I think so. And and it's clarifying. It's put it this way also. What if you have a mentally disabled person?
Okay.
At what point do you say, oh, you understand enough?
What do you mean you understand? Oh, for like baptism?
Yeah.
Or
Like, what's the level that we need to reach to where you can say, okay, now you're sufficiently...
Again, I don't think we should ever make that distinction. Like I said, if my 5-year-old comes to me and says they want to get baptized, I would talk to them and say, okay, what does baptism mean to you? And if they don't really have an answer, like they don't even know, that tells me they only want to do it because their friend Bobby got baptized, right? But if they're like, oh, it means that I'm showing everybody that I want to follow Jesus. Now, whether I believe them or not that they're actually saved at that age, I'm still going to let them get water baptized.
Okay, so what if they say, I want to receive Christ?
Then the same thing. I would ask them, what do you mean by that?
Okay.
And I would talk to them about the gospel. I would make sure they understand the gospel. I'd make sure they understand what that means to receive Christ.
They say, okay, yep, got it, boom.
Then I would pray with them.
You wouldn't baptize them?
Oh, well, that was 2 different questions. I said I would baptize them before that.
No, I know, but I'm going the opposite way around. What if they said, I want to accept Christ, not I want to get baptized?
Oh, you mean would I baptize them before praying with them?
No, it just...
Well, the first thing I would do was...
Pray with them and then
yes, the
baptize
first
them.
thing I would do was attempt to help them, for lack of a better word, receive Christ. Right? And then how do I do that?
Yeah.
Again, like I said, making sure that they understand what they're saying and make sure they understand the gospel, make sure that they're believing.
So you get an affirmation.
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay.
An affirmation to the right thing.
Okay.
But at the same time, I would never go back to that in the past and say, I know my son is saved because I prayed with him when he was 5 years old and he professed that he wanted to follow Jesus.
Yeah.
Sure, he's 25 now and he's in jail and he's doing all these horrible things, but I'm standing by the fact that he's definitely saved.
Yes, but see, that's really interesting because you'd say if a child comes and says, I want to receive Christ, and you say, okay, well, what does that mean? And they give you the affirmation.
Sure.
Then you could say, okay, you've confessed with your mouth. You say you believe in your heart. Okay. So now what I would say is now you need to go get baptized.
Right, so you would initiate them getting baptized.
I would say, yeah, if you're going to follow Christ, if you accept Christ, now you need to go get baptized.
No, I would probably do the same. Yeah, I would say,
And to me, that's what we've lost in the church.
Okay. It doesn't always follow it the way it should closely follow it. You think it's once a person receives Christ, they should be baptized as soon as possible.
I think receiving Christ, I think baptism is a part of receiving Christ, period.
But see that again goes back to what you see. You make a statement like that, and it makes it sound like water baptism is necessary for salvation.
Is profession necessary?
No.
Okay.
But I think it's impossible to be truly indwelt by the Spirit and not profess Christ.
See, I would say, yeah, and I think, to me, baptism, rightly understood, I think a lot of people I don't think maybe aren't taught this, but baptism is profession. It's part of profession.
I agree.
So
that's what it is. Yes,
just as important as profession, in my opinion.
Well, yes. But that's okay. So when you said profession before, I'm thinking profession of Christ for yourself. I profess that Christ is my Savior. I profess that I'm going to follow the Lord, right? So yes, that's what you're doing. You're surrendering. You're repenting and surrendering to God. He's going to indwell you and change your life.
I think baptism is meant to be that profession.
Well, that's a profession to the rest of the world, I would say. That's a profession to your friends and family. Well, okay, then you can just baptize yourself in a bathtub in a bathroom by yourself.
No. What I'm saying is I think when he says profess, it means public. It's not private. And that's what baptism is. You profess publicly that you've accepted Christ.
Sure. Okay, so then I would say maybe confess would be the more the more personal part of salvation than for a person's salvation.
Yes.
You're right. Profess is more outward to those around.
But in the modern day church, what I've experienced growing up has been salvation experience is I hear it, I raise my hand, and I pray a prayer.
Mm-hmm.
Now I'm saved. And then baptism
and I would,
you can add on to it later if you feel like it.
Right. But see, I don't... Yeah. I would disagree with that wording. I think profession, I think you're right. Profession is to others.
Mm-hmm.
So where it says in Romans 10:9,
mm-hmm.
he who confesses with the mouth,
mm-hmm. believes
in the heart, right? Mm-hmm. That's what I think is, that's the more personal, that's what's happening when a person gets saved.
What's interesting, though, is Paul does do those two things. He doesn't just say believe in your heart. And I think that's, as the church today, we stop there.
Well, he says believe. And because
believe
he doesn't...
with your heart.
Well, no, he says believe in your heart. But you're saying other places he just says believe.
Well, yes, but I'm just saying as a church, I think we do the believe in the heart pretty well. We don't do the profess with your mouth well. We just say, oh, you believed in your heart, and you know that, so you're good.
Well, but
we don't say,
but
you need to now
again,
profess it.
I think that the confess and profess are different.
Yeah,
so I think that well, he does.
He says profess with your mouth.
No. I'll have to look at that. I'm pretty sure that's confess in that text in Romans 10:9. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure that's confess.
Okay, you could be
He who
right.
believes in his heart and confesses with the mouth. And the reason I say that is because it's the idea of the overflow of the heart, the mouth speaks.
Yes.
And that word for confession.
Yes.
Has to do with it means to speak the same. So it's like your mouth is agreeing with what's in your heart already.
Yeah.
So it's again it's
a good point, yeah.
But anyway, so all right, man, that was fun. Wish I didn't have to go back to work. We didn't even touch on Calvinism. We'll have to do that next time. We're talking Calvinism. So
yeah,
cool, man. Well, thanks for coming.
I greatly appreciate you giving this episode a listen. Do me a favor and help spread the word to those that you know. If you have any questions or comments for me, don't hesitate to reach out. My email is whycan'twetallkaboutthat@proton.me. Here's a little snippet from next week.
And I think because it doesn't make any sense, if you listen to it, it doesn't make sense.
Okay.
But people are like, oh, some man forced her to sing this song so they could get profit off her, and all these people are saying all these things. I'm like, that's not even true. So
right.
I went to her family's YouTube channel and I watched the music video that this little girl released.
Mm-hmm.
I watched the whole video and I was like, first of all, that's a small portion of the song. Second of all, I don't think she's violating anything by naming Taylor Swift songs. People reference Taylor Swift all the time in their music.
Right.
I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
Sure.
And so people are just hating on this little girl for this song. And I was like, what were you doing when you were 10? Can I hear the song you wrote when you were 10?
Right.
Please?
If you even did.
Yeah. Can I see the music videos you made when you were 10?
Right.
Want to see the ones I made when I was 10?
Yeah.
People are ridiculous. And I was
know.
like, stop hating on this little girl just because other people are hating on this little girl and everybody's jumping on the bandwagon. I'm like, you don't even know the story.